An incredible view opened up before us. The peaks of the Mura Middle Plan, bathed in the sun. This is a monastery of the cult of the celestial demon. The patriarch of the heavenly demon cult, actually a heavenly demon, sat in disappointment. The first elder, the demon fist, named Hyun Nim, fell to his knees before him. His voice trembled with anger. All 9 sects had already submitted, and the patriarch was still inactive. He had nothing to do. The patriarch slowly stood up. His gaze was blank, but there was a shadow of memory lingering in it. He reminded Hyun that his soul and body had once separated during practice. At first, it was even fun. He could fly to the moon wherever he wanted. But over time, it became a curse. The affairs of the monastery became indifferent to him. Hyun sobbed again, and the demon only clenched his fists in anger. He swung to hit the elder. It seemed like just a moment more, but the blow passed through the body like a mist. No pain, no trace. No matter how powerful it was, without a physical body, it was powerless. Suddenly, a black hole opened in the middle of the room. It spun and began to pull in everything around it. Even he, the heavenly demon, was dragged into the depths of darkness. He tried to stop, using the rock's gravity technique. His body must have weighed 6 tons. But the magic didn't work. He was incorporeal. The technique had no power. He was pulled into the hole, and in a moment it was gone, as if it had never been there. Before us rose the dark figures of people who questioned the magical powers of a boy who was just an ordinary citizen and not even a magician. Hyun Su woke up in a cold sweat from this horrible dream. He couldn't tell what was reality and what was a dream, and he screamed loudly. Then he exhaled heavily and realized that it was just a dream after all. This happened on August 12th, 2023, on that fateful day when the heavens seemed to open. Once upon a time, portals to other worlds opened simultaneously across the earth. Monsters began to emerge from these portals onto the ground by the hundreds. They destroyed anything and everything that came under their feet. Humanity tried to counterattack with the best weapons of their time. However, modern weapons were useless against monsters. Humanity was threatened with complete destruction. And then superpowers began to awaken in people. Among them, Class C hunters stood out, in whom abilities of the highest power had awakened. Their weapons were effective against monsters. When the war ended in victory, the C-class hunters were granted unlimited power. What happened to the 1% of people without superpowers, the so-called ordinary people? We will now find out. Park Hyun Su, 27 years old, one of them, a support worker, sat in his room with a sad face, holding his phone in his hands. The message on the phone said that there was a shortage of beds in the hospital, and if he didn't make the payment by the end of the month, Hen Tessie would have to be discharged. Writing out Hyun T meant his instant death. Hyun Su could not bear it. He took up the rope. It is better to die than to see the last member of his family die in agony, like all the others. If he has no guardian, the authorities will take him into custody. Hyun Su cried. He did everything he could for his brother, and his hands were already down. But at that moment, a strange light filled the room. A black hole opened up in the middle of the room. Hyun Su panicked and called for help. The body of a celestial demon appeared from the black hole. It flew straight at Heng and knocked him off his feet. They fell onto the bed. Hyun did not understand who was in front of him, and the demon was surprised that he was visible to him. Hong kicked him away from him and began to shout that if there was nothing to be taken from him in this robbery, he himself was poor as a falcon. The demon didn't react and just started looking around the room he found himself in. Hyun was shocked that the demon's feet were not touching the ground, and he was floating in the air. Hyun asked many questions, trying to figure out where this demon came from and if he was a hunter. The demon's attention was drawn to the television set on the table. He wanted to touch the interesting curiosity, but his hands passed through the TV. He was still disembodied. Hyun cried at the thought that it was the demon of death who had come to take him. But now he didn't want to. He had a brother, and he had to stay alive. The demon hit him on the head. It was a surprise. He could touch him. The demon thought for a second, and boldly stepped out of Hyun's room, walking through the door. The demon found himself in broad daylight in a big city. He found it strange that people no longer rode in horse-drawn carriages, but in very fast contraptions. The high-rise buildings were also mesmerizing with their height. It was definitely not the middle plan. The demon turned to one of the passers-by for help, but his hand passed through the boy's body. He realized that he could only touch Hyun's body, and his eyes lit up. Then he rushed back with all his might. Heng had just finished patching up the hole in his wall. He wondered if it was a portal, and if so, he should report it to the authorities. But then he got a call. It was the hunter, Kim Hak-seon. He was very happy to hear her call, because she told him that they needed support on the portal and needed his help. Hyun exhaled. If he was called by a B-class hunter himself, Death was definitely not an option. But at that moment, the demon spirit appeared in the room again and reproached him for talking to himself. Strange. Hyun screamed at the top of his lungs. He didn't understand what the demon was doing in his room again. The demon was charging a price and said that he had no great desire to return to his hut. Some unknown force had drawn him back. Hyun didn't listen to him. He had to quickly pack up and get to the hospital to help the people at the portal, and ordered that he find another place to live before he arrived. The demon wondered who these hunters and portals were. Han, but he didn't have time to explain anything. He repeated that if he didn't get out, he would call the police. At that moment, he grabbed him by the hood, and they lifted off the ground on the wings of a celestial demon. The people standing in the yard couldn't believe their eyes. Everyone watched as Hyun flew through the sky. Seeing the bus he wanted, Demon dropped it, and it flew sharply down to stop. On the ground, Heng felt nauseous. On the bus, Hyun was sitting and very worried about going to Portal B. They were dangerous, but if he survived, he would bring money to pay for the hospital. He was pulled out of his thoughts by a question from a demon that had emerged directly from the ceiling of the bus. The people around him looked at each other, surprised at the strange man. And the demon calmly explained that an unknown force brings him back to Heng every time he tries to leave. Heng wasn't thrilled about having a ghost following him around, but at least he'd have someone to talk to. They arrived at Kangdong-gai, where a portal had opened on the top of Mount Ilitch. The other hunters had already reached there. The supports were ordered to take one set of equipment each and leave. Hung took the box and left, although the task was not easy, and now everyone approached the portal. Kim Hak-sun, 22 years old, a B-class hunter, gave everyone orders and explained that he was in command of this operation. Another hunter, Yarin, 23 years old, a Class B hunter, told everyone to remember that Class B portals were dangerous and asked them to keep an eye on the newcomers. A unit consisting of one Class B hunter, 4 Class C hunters, and 5 support personnel was to go to the portal for reconnaissance. While everyone was checking their equipment, Hyun was only thinking about how gorgeous Yarin was. But then, a familiar voice called out to him. It was Choi, Jun-seung, 28 years old, a B-class hunter, who expressed surprise that after the extreme operation, Hyun is still a support. Cold sweat broke out on Han's face. Choi was a horned devil who would poke fun at everyone left and right, pretending he was just joking. One time, he put Hyun out of action for a whole month, just like that, for nothing. Hyun wasn't so happy to meet him that he forgot to say hello. Choi wondered who had called him here, and Hyung narrowing his eyes, he simply said that the hunter was Kim Han-seong. After asking him not to do anything like last time, Choi punched him in the stomach. While Hyun writhed in pain, he calmly walked away from him, in support of Hyun, expressing dissatisfaction with the boy's behavior, then gave it to Hong's silencer. Everyone turned around, wondering what was happening to this weirdo. And the demon only added that he was a clown. The operation has begun. Everyone started entering the portal. Most people complained that the feeling was not the most pleasant, even if it was not the first time they had experienced it. The demon had the same feelings when he was pulled into Haina's world. After exiting the portal, they found themselves on completely dry land. Captain Kim asked for information about the world they had been transported to. One hunter began searching for information. While she searched, Demon wanted Hen to go and scout the situation himself, but he couldn't do that without orders. The demon mocked him because he couldn't take a step without an order. He was just a mere servant bearer. It was true. The demon mused that there was a desert on the surface of this world, but below he could feel the flow of water. The girl who was seeking information confirmed the demon's thoughts, reporting that the device showed that the essence of this world was water. The captain thought it was a mistake, not believing her words. Then, from under the place where he was standing, a fountain of water gushed out. Within a second, dozens of such fountains appeared, and all the hunters were in shock. After a while, monsters emerged from these fountains, resembling mutant fish with tridents, blazing eyes, and sharp teeth. Everyone was shocked that the mermen had spotted them so quickly. All the supports had to rely on the hunters. One of the supports was injured by the monster and fell into the water stream. Then the monsters attacked the others, stabbing them with their spears. Hyun was also in despair because he didn't expect this. Usually the entrance is a safe zone. The B-class hunters were barely coping. One of the hunters asked the support for a spear. Trying to lift him, the monster hit him with a jet of water and carried him aside. At this point, Hyun was also injured by the monster's a harpoon, which pierced his body armor. Coming to his senses, he opened his eyes, and the insatiable eyes of one of the monsters were already hanging over him. Jan looked closely at his weapon. It was something terrifying. Russell raised his hammer to strike. But a meter from Heng's head, something flew into the monster, and his head cracked. This was a demon who could fight these monsters and struck the heavenly demon king with his blow. This blow was 10 times stronger than the highest technique of Shaolin monks, finger snapping. The demon was gathering all the energy. He was, of course, not thrilled that he had reached such a level that he had to help ordinary hunters. But he was ready to show all his power. Countless monsters tried to attack the demon fiercely. However, he easily dodged the barrage of sharp harpoons. With just one skillful movement, the demon inflicted devastating wounds on the monsters. His boundless combat experience made him incomparably stronger than these creatures. Then the demon used the devastating Flash of Chaos, an energy that instantly destroyed all life within a radius of 45 meters. A bright, blinding flash erupted from his fist. All the monsters scattered to pieces with a terrifying scream, creating a powerful wave of destructive force. When the wave receded, the dark, almost ephemeral figure of the demon appeared in its place. The other hunters were completely confused. Because the usual support, there was no way that Hen could be involved in such an incredible spectacle. Suddenly, a terrible monster began to slowly rise from the deep abyss, the Fish Prince himself. He was probably destined to die at the hands of a true master. The demon rushed at the monster, but its incorporeal form passed through it without a trace. Shock shot through the demon. He felt his own energy disappear somewhere, leaving him, depriving him of the ability to harm these creatures. The prince instantly noticed the defenseless Heng, who was standing nearby. The monster pounced on him with fierce hatred, delivering a devastating blow straight to the stomach. Hyun flew a few meters and hit his back painfully on sharp stones. Only an instinctive block saved his life, but the last of his strength left his exhausted body. The demon loomed over the exhausted Heng, and a grim statement sounded in his voice. If he did not rise, inevitable death awaited him. Heng was horrified to see the prince preparing to attack again, his deadly weapon already aimed at him. And at the last moment, the demon saved him from the inevitable blow. "Get up!" an imperious order was heard. Having failed Hina to his feet, the demon sternly ordered him to look closely at their powerful enemy. He looked incredibly strong and terrifying, but Demon noticed a tiny detail. The bones of his legs seemed surprisingly thin, indicating a vulnerable spot. The collarbones looked especially unprotected. The demon impatiently pushed the confused Heng. "Run! Break his damn bones!" John stood in complete confusion before the monster's gigantic body, not understanding how he, a weak support, could do any harm to it. "It's all that old grandfather," flashed through his mind. "In close combat, use your elbows, do it!" The demon's commanding voice sounded behind him. Overcoming his terror, Heng gathered all his will into a fist and with desperate determination aimed at the monster. With all his strength, he hit his elbow right into the prince's chin. Then he delivered another devastating blow to the collarbone. With a terrible scream, the monster fell to the ground, and Hyun, unable to control himself from adrenaline, struck another blow. Hyun stood there stunned, unable to believe his eyes. Was it really him? A weak support who had managed to cut down this giant mermaid with his own hands? "Why are you standing over a corpse? Finish him off!" The demon's sharp voice snapped him out of his overwhelming thoughts. Before that, Heng had only killed small monsters, slimy and defenseless. But how dare you finally destroy such a terrible creature? The demon insisted that if Hyun let him get up, he would finish him off first. He should finish him off now and go help the others. Heng glanced at the battlefield, where a fierce battle was raging. Yes, it was war, and Hen had to help his comrades. Suddenly, painful memories flooded back to Han. He remembered that fateful trip with his family. Suddenly, a horrible monster emerged from the ground, right in the middle of the road, while they were all in the middle of the car. Father lost control of the steering wheel, and the car plunged down into a bottomless abyss. The mother and father died on the spot. The younger brother was still in the hospital, in an unknown condition. Hein raised his bloodied spear over the lifeless body of the merman. "It's all because of people like you," he whispered through tears, burning with anger and grief. Gathering all his hatred and pain, Hyun, with a cry of despair, plunged his spear into the slippery body of the dead monster. And at that moment, a bright blue light flashed around him. He felt his limits of strength suddenly expand as he overcame another difficult obstacle. Hen, with incredible delight, a transparent hologram appeared before his eyes with his updated statistics. And at the very bottom, a new message shone. The unique ability of following clues has been discovered. Disappointment gripped Han's heart as he realized what abilities had been revealed to him. Meanwhile, other hunters fought desperately with their fierce enemies. Kim Hak-sun felt anxious, as no one expected such high-class monsters to appear in this portal. He gave the order to retreat, realizing that their intelligence had been horribly mistaken, and the portal had turned out to be much more dangerous. Yaren confirmed the captain's order and called on everyone who could still stand to help the wounded. General panic forced them to retreat from the bloody battlefield. Hyun had never been in such a deadly situation before, and he would undoubtedly have died if not for the demon's intervention. Kim leaned towards Hyun, and in his gaze was read the serious conversation that awaited him upon his return. Hyun involuntarily began to wonder what he had done wrong and what punishment might await him. All the fighters hurriedly left the dangerous portal. The families of those killed in this terrible battle were promised posthumous awards from the association. A minute of silence was declared on the battlefield as a sign of mourning for the fallen heroes. Choi stood with his head down, but there was no real regret in his eyes. He knew that despite their losses and pain, the association would still hold the responsibility for this incident on their seniors. However, a spark of interest flickered in his thoughts. Today they had gained another awakened one. He pointed at Hyun and, with feigned joy, congratulated him on the event. Hyun was stunned, not understanding how everyone knew about it. So this is what he wanted to talk about, flashed through his mind. Then everyone was ordered to pack the equipment in the form in which it was, because it was the property of the association. Hyun was mechanically stacking boxes when suddenly someone's hand fell on his shoulder. It was Choi, who curiously asked if he was already celebrating his awakening. In his understanding, the world had clearly turned upside down. Someone was dying, and someone like Hen woke up. Choi, with a mocking smile, wondered what incredible superpower was hidden in Hyun. Everyone around was also eagerly awaiting the answer. What amazing ability this weakling had discovered. Hyun barely uttered his superpower, following clues. A loud explosion of laughter rang out all around. Hyun bit his lip bitterly. He was mortally tired of being the object of ridicule. The demon leaned in as if asking if he understood correctly that Hyung was ashamed of his unique ability. Choi continued to mock, asking if the roof had gone down with the awakening of the force, as he stood there talking to himself. He swung to hit Hyun and test his strength. Following hints was instantly activated. The demon, who was invisibly standing behind, whispered to him to take a step back. And Choi missed in surprise. He couldn't believe his eyes. The application of the imitating hints system was successfully completed. Heng's attack power increased by 15%. Choi's eyes flared with rage, and he lunged at Hyun again. The demon, the invisible assistant, began giving quick cues again. Tiger squat on the left, lightning strike on the right. The system instantly registered all these commands. For Heng, time seemed to slow down. New combat techniques were being recorded in his memory. He moved abruptly from his spot, performing a tiger squat to the left. After successfully blocking Choi's attack, Hyun's lightning strike instantly arrived. Choi flew back, flying several meters and flipping several times in the air. He lay helplessly on the ground, and there were stunned people standing around him, shocked that the weak Hyun was able to knock a B-class hunter off his feet with one blow. Even though Hyun had only woken up 3 hours ago, Choi lay motionless, saliva dripping from his mouth. Another hunter, who came to examine the unconscious Choi, reported that his pulse was normal, but that it was necessary to urgently call the doctors. Hyun looked at his fist, still not believing what had happened. At this moment, Captain Kim approached him and sternly remarked that the use of force against a colleague was strictly prohibited and could lead to criminal liability. But then his face broke into a faint smile. However, this time he would pretend that nothing had happened. He promised to order a word from the association for him, and he should go there to assign a new class. Everyone around was amazed at what he did to Choi. Even the elegant Ayarin greeted him and extended her hand, expressing hope for fruitful cooperation. Han's heart pounded wildly. Yarin herself spoke to him. The demon felt Han's heart pound at the sight of this girl. He watched his reaction in surprise. Then, Hen calmed down a bit and mentally addressed the demon. Falling to his knees, he begged the demon to become his teacher. He desperately asked to be taught martial arts. The demon thought for a moment. No, he didn't want to take on students. He believed that taking care of someone would take away his own time for martial arts training. Heng didn't understand the point of these trainings for a disembodied being. And wasn't the demon himself complaining of unbearable boredom? Hyun tried to convince him by reminding him of his own helplessness in the portal and his complete dependence on his help. A doubt arose in Demon's soul. If Hyun dies, will he be able to return to where he came from? Hyun persisted, pointing out his weakness and need for strength and recalling his last fight. The demon wondered if training would help Hyun become a hunter and gain freedom of movement. He explained that once he reached Class A, he would be able to go anywhere, and Class C would make him untouchable, and no one would dare challenge him. The demon's eyes lit up with interest, because in that case, he himself would become untouchable. He ordered Hyun to undergo the ritual of 9 bows. The demon agreed to become his teacher, but on condition that he perform this ancient rite. Hang felt uncomfortable about having to do it in front of witnesses, but demon sternly warned, now or never, and Hyun reluctantly fell to the ground, beginning his bows. The other hunters looked at each other in surprise, not understanding Hyun's strange behavior. Yarin and Kim exchanged glances, assuming that the guy was not right in the head. After the battle, Hyun returned to his modest apartment. There, the demon was furious, finding it impossible to teach anyone in such a mess. Hyun didn't really feel like cleaning, but after another tangible reassurance, he reluctantly got down to business. The demon asked about the reason for the papered wall. Heng explained that the portal the demon came from still exists. This interested the disembodied guest, and he tried to penetrate it again. And suddenly he pulled Hyun along with him. They both passed through the shimmering curtain of the portal. A strange place opened up before them, where only an oppressive emptiness could be felt. However, the demon considered it the perfect place for a life and death test. Hyun's face. The demon ordered him to sit down and, without further ado, take off his shirt. Han obediently carried out the order, and the demon began his mysterious ritual. He folded his hands and began to concentrate invisible energy in them. Then he touched Hyun's back. The boy screamed from the unexpected sensation. The demon was adjusting the flow of his meridians and energy nodes. Before starting to study martial arts, it was necessary to clear the energy channels, as well as the blood vessels. If this was painful for Hyun, the future of his studies promised to be even more difficult. Hyun sat, his teeth clenched in patience. The demon pressed down on his chakras with all his might, clearing them of any obstructions. Despite the incredible pain, Hyun held on bravely, his body surprisingly resilient. The last, most painful stage of the ritual remained. Hang winced in unbearable pain. However, Demon mentally noted that he had never encountered such a healthy body before. Chakra cleansing took surprisingly little time. Hyun sighed inwardly with relief, feeling that he had almost died. Just a little more, and he really wouldn't have survived. The demon mused. Hang's body was ideally suited for martial arts, but he lived in a time when these ancient techniques were gradually being forgotten. After completing the ritual, they left the strange portal. Hyun felt incredibly light, as if all his fatigue had been lifted by a magic hand. The demon was not surprised, because he had thoroughly cleansed all of his energy channels. Hyun felt so light that he thought he could fly. And he really flew off, hitting his head painfully on the ceiling and getting stuck there. The demon forgot an important detail. He shared with Hang a part of his divine energy, a piece of the skill of a celestial demon. Falling from the ceiling, Hyun wondered how this was even possible. The demon casually remarked that it was a bit dangerous, and he was still amazed that Hong had survived it. Heng was shocked that the Fogo was almost killed, but then a tangible blow hit him in the face. He shouldn't have raised his voice at the teacher. If Hong had not been able to withstand even a small fraction of divine energy, he would never have been able to begin his training, because what he had learned the day before was the only technique available to mortals. Despite the power of this technique, it alone was not enough to become a true disciple. The morning of a new day has come. Hyun came to the association to take his class assessment. He told the secretary that Kim Hak-sun was supposed to speak for him. The girl's eyes shone with surprise and delight because the same guy was standing in front of her. She couldn't help herself and started taking selfies with him. Then she told him to go down to the 5th underground floor, where he would find the appraisal department and chief appraiser Nak-soo. Hyun shifted nervously from foot to foot in the elevator. When the door opened, he was faced with a long corridor. He was surprised by the strange sound coming from there. The number 687 inches and a comment about a great shot were brightly displayed on the electronic scoreboard. The girl in the center of the training room had just completed her powerful kick. The man standing nearby did not hide his admiration for the result he saw, 687 units. She felt strong enough to do more and expressed a desire to try again. Chief appraiser Jong Nok-soo, 30 years old, who was watching the process through the protective glass, calmly remarked that this was enough for Class B. Class A's kicks started at 900 units, and she still needed to practice. Her face showed disappointment. Then Jong opened the door and greeted Hyun warmly. He escorted him to his office, explaining that Kim had given advance notice of his early visit. Jong nodded at the boy standing next to the girl, Chang Hong-si. He ran up to Hang and greeted him with great respect, expressing his admiration. He added that rumors about Hyun's exploits, including how he put Choi in his place, were June Sona, have already spread throughout the association. Now Hen understood the reason for the excitement. The girl impatiently asked if they could continue testing her. Jong announced that his assistant Kim would complete Han Ul-see's assessment, and he would take care of By the Way. Their eyes met by chance, and Hyun was embarrassed. The demon, as always, sensed his confusion and mentally wondered the reason for Hyun's unhealthy fear of women. Han's head again, making her turn around, surprised by this strange phenomenon. She couldn't believe that this clumsy boy was really one of the awakened. An interest flared up in Han's soul, because this could be her future colleague, with whom she would have to fight monsters side by side. Hyun was given a special tight-fitting suit for testing. The demon expressed his dissatisfaction with such revealing attire, believing that clothing should hide male dignity. Finally, Hyun was about to begin testing. A bright red light came on the measuring device. The demon mentally told Hyun to focus on his dantian, the center of chi energy in the body. The power he had used yesterday during the new technique had come from there, and now he needed to learn how to draw on it. Hyun felt a powerful surge of energy. It was an incredible force. He swung decisively to strike. His eyes were burning with determination. He was completely ready. Hyun struck the strongest blow, which seemed to make everything around him shine. John looked out of his office, unable to suppress an exclamation of surprise. An incredible number appeared on the dial, 1120. Hyun felt incredible joy from such a result, significantly higher than the girl's 700 units. After all, he used the same lightning strike, but after cleansing his energy channels, his strength increased significantly. John happily walked over to him, mentally noting that hits in the 900, 1500 range were A-class scores, and anything above that was only S-class. Hyung impatiently asked for another blow. Jong agreed, but warned that their protective shield might not hold. After the devastating blow, the shield really shattered into pieces. John just waved his hand, stating that there was nothing he could do, they had no other shield, and suggested moving on to the next test. Next was the kick testing. The number 1377 appeared on the counter. John wrote down the result, mentally noting that he was just a little short of Class S. The demon raged in his mind, believing that if Hung had concentrated faster, he would have knocked out the necessary 1,500 units long ago. Many other measurements were then carried out. Hyun demonstrated his agility in high jumps and endurance on the treadmill. Also reaction, dodging the training robot's bullets. John was delighted, mentally stating a stable A grade, and despite the incomplete testing, he had no doubts about his conclusion. After lunch, Hyun had to go through the most important test, a battle with a simulator. John advised Hyung to get some food in the cafeteria, believing that he would need a lot of strength before such a serious test. Hyung agreed. There was a delicious ramen on the table. Hyun felt a great joy because it had been a long time since he had last eaten it. The price of it had risen sharply after the factories closed, and he couldn't even look at it in the shops. But now he ate it with great pleasure. The demon was mentally surprised by such delight in ordinary noodles. To Heng, this simple dish seemed like the best thing in the world, and he suddenly wanted to treat the invisible teacher. Remembering all of Demon's venomous remarks throughout the day, Hen decided to poke fun at him a little. Next, he walked to the combat simulation room. A barely alive Han emerged from the door of the battle simulator. Kim reassured her, assuring her that she had done excellently, and suggested she go to the office to get her class assignment documents. Hyun, but he went inside. There was no turning back. He was greeted at the battle simulation system by Jong, explaining that this incredibly realistic system was created by the brilliant engineer and C-class hunter Anderson Walker. The combat simulation provided an extremely realistic feel for fighting monsters. Even the damage received in the simulation had tangible consequences. There were 10 levels to complete in total. Since Hyun received an A grade, he started right away at level 4. The battle simulation has begun. The floor beneath Hyun's feet was instantly covered in lush green grass, completely changing the environment. He found himself in the middle of a dense, unfamiliar forest. The demon did not hide his admiration, recognizing the talent of the creator of this simulation, because everything around looked too realistic. Dimensional magic was often used to deceive an enemy or hide something important. However, for a master like Demon, this technique seemed like a cheap trick. They should have prepared for battle. A demon-like bird suddenly flew out of the thick bushes. The demon was ready to act. This time, despite his strength being at its limits that day, he felt confident in his ability to help Hyun. Hyun also resolutely, but still a little excited, rushed to destroy the monsters, the number of which was constantly changing. The demon mentally suggested using the lazy donkey somersault. Heng instantly fell to the ground, and the predatory beasts missed. However, they regrouped, preparing for a new attack on Heng. But suddenly something scared them. A huge foot crushed one of the wolves. An ogre appeared before them. He raised his huge fist to strike. Hyun barely had time to dodge. However, another blow immediately came, shattering the tree right in front of him with a crash. Heng could not hold back his scream, believing the ogre to be too strong and begging the teacher for help. Heng's new power let him come up with something himself. Hyun understood that if he ran away, he wouldn't get his dream class A. He resolutely rushed at the giant, ready to strike, which the device during training estimated at 1377 units. It hit him right in the leg. For a moment, this threw the ogre off balance, but he instantly regained his composure. Then the ogre grabbed Han with both hands and began to squeeze him mercilessly. Hyun felt that losing consciousness would mean the end. He mentally begged the teacher for help. "Even out your breathing," came the prompt. "Also, distribute the energy throughout your body," the demon's voice commanded. Hyun began to concentrate his inner energy. He felt its growing strength. And suddenly, with incredible effort, he broke the ogre's strong embrace. He jumped up sharply, grabbed the giant by the head, and kneed him in the face with all his strength. Ogre's face was shattered into pieces by the terrifying force of the blow. The monster was defeated. Hyun was instantly back in the simulator. Jong reported that the 4th level had been completed, and if he was ready, then in 5 minutes it would be possible to move on to the 5th. His surprise knew no bounds, because no one had ever broken through the physical suppression system so quickly. A pleasant female voice sounded from behind. Lee Mina, 25 years old, a class A hunter and an influential member of the association, expressed her admiration for Hyun's power. John wondered how quickly rumors of talented newcomers spread through the association if she was already here. Lee Mina couldn't let such a promising hunter be lured away by someone else. The 5th level has begun. Hang shivered from the piercing cold. Such a powerful magician, capable of creating the illusion of weather, seemed incredible. The demon admitted that even among sorcerers who possess the techniques of mystical dimensions, not all are capable of such a feat. Then they noticed a woman running towards them, desperately screaming for help. She rushed at Hyun, and at first he couldn't understand what was happening. He tried to wake her up, but she didn't respond. Suddenly her clothes tore. She let out a terrifying growl, and her body became covered in red, demonic skin. Huge wings grew from her back. The 5th level simulated a battle with vampires. Lee watched Hyun carefully. He was strikingly different from all the awakened ones she had seen before. His impractical fighting stance was reminiscent of old martial arts movies. It looked incredible, but it was also effective. Hyun continued the fight, delivering blow after blow. The vampire standing before him expressed his respect, recognizing Hain as a worthy opponent. But suddenly, Hyun's hand pierced his body right in the heart area. Hyun held his heart in his hands. The demon felt proud of his student. John enthusiastically stated that the 5th level had been passed and called Hyun incredible. He also asked if Hyun was ready to move on to level 6 after the 30-minute break. Hen stayed in the simulator until evening. He came out of there terribly tired. Jong congratulated him, informing him that he had become the first among all A-class hunters to pass the 5th level. He suggested that Hyun go to the office to get the documents. After that, they thanked each other and said goodbye. But before he could leave, Lee stopped him. She introduced herself and held out her hand to him. Of course, Hyun blushed. The demon mockingly remarked that if he was his student, all the women would be lining up to meet him. Lee handed Hyun a contract to review and sign. She assured him that any A-class hunter would be interested in such terms. Hyun began to read the contract carefully, mentally not believing that he would soon become a real hunter. The conditions included stable income and bonuses for expeditions to portals. Lee emphasized that the contract was tailored specifically for Hyun. The demon sat invisibly nearby, admiring her beauty. He hinted to Hyun that such a beautiful girl was offering him conditions, but in that case, he also had the right to make his demands and deserved more. He was offered a 10-year contract. Hyun firmly stated that he preferred a 5-year contract. He also added that the allowances for risks to life and health seemed too small to him, considering his future expeditions to Class C portals. Lee was surprised by the rookie's audacity, but she recognized his potential for rapid growth to sea level, and they couldn't lose him. Suddenly, the door was thrown open by a strong kick. A pink-haired girl confidently entered the room. Lee was shocked by her unexpected appearance. It was Ha Urakas from the influential Red Lions Guild. She accused the association of being at it again, offering Kabbalistic contracts. She greeted Hyun, who was stunned by the handshake with the C-class hunter. The demon did not hide his admiration, considering this girl also very attractive. "Urak," Sai sat on the bed next to Lee and declared that her guild would offer Hyun twice as good terms, regardless of the association's offer. Lee was in shock, not understanding how she was even allowed here. The demon mentally informed Hyun that this girl was actually very strong, and he had never encountered such strength in this world. She was the leader of the most powerful guild in Korea. They both started arguing, Yurak Sai persistently trying to lure Hyun away, claiming that the choice was obvious, because in the guild, he would have much more opportunities due to the lack of bureaucratic costs. The Red Lion Guild gained the same rights as the association, and now had monopoly power over the portals. All they had to do was get the commission's official approval. Lee was stunned. The Red Lion Guild now had the same power as a government agency. Their verbal exchange continued, but suddenly Hyun stood up. He made a decision. Both girls looked at him with hope in their eyes. The next scene unfolded again on Mount Ilitch. The hunters fought desperately against the mermaids and their deadly harpoons. The hunters were clearly losing. There were significantly more monsters than expected. This was definitely not a Class B portal. One of the hunters, in despair, called for help from the unit's sergeant. He ordered everyone to retreat immediately, promising to detain the monsters. The sergeant used a complex shadow clone technique, one of the most difficult C-class techniques, designed for a maximum of 10 minutes. The hunters barely made it out of the portal, thanks to the self-sacrifice of the foreman they survived. They were outside the portal, all anxiously awaiting the appearance of the captain's real body. The commander's mutilated body barely crawled out of the portal. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. But suddenly, a powerful wave of water gushed out of the portal. Mermaid appeared from the watery abyss. He brutally bit off half of the foreman's body. Everyone screamed in horror. The association's office opened before us. Two women sat on the couch, disappointed. Heng informed them that he had decided to wait and see what other guilds had to offer, hoping for better terms. He assured them that they had his number and could call if anything changed. Hyun stood up and confidently walked towards the exit. Ha was furious. Both the Red Lions and the association offered him cooperation, but he just walked away. But deep down, she doubted that anyone else would contact him. She seethed with anger and left the office. Lee sighed. Ha never changed and remained just as hot-tempered. In his apartment, Hyun familiarized himself with the new achievements of the system and the acquired skills. Skill class: Transcendent. Skill: Dominant Heavenly Demon's Gate. Then they entered the portal. Now he was to learn the Dominant Heavenly Demon's Gate. The demon loomed over him and began to explain. Stance, correct movement are the basics of martial arts. Only after mastering the basics could he move on to learning the techniques. Judging by Hyun's skills, he should have understood everything the first time. The demon began to show him poses, first standing. Then, the appearance of the heavenly demon, a special movement. The system informed Hyun that he had mastered the Dominant Demon Gate Apparition Movement Complex. The movements were supposed to be light and smooth. Heng watched in admiration. The demon seemed to be moving, but it seemed not. The demon changed its location, describing a circle, but seemingly remaining in one place. This is it, demon apparition, the disembodied teacher said. Hung couldn't understand how he could possibly believe it. The system told him that he had not absorbed the information, and now his comprehension level had dropped to 38%. Even with his abilities, he couldn't achieve mastery right away. But he had to concentrate and observe, because there is a lot of trial and error on the path of a master. The second set of movements was the flight of the heavenly demon. The demon changed its postures very smoothly, but quickly, as if it were flying. The demon explained that Heng was to ride the air like a horse, and in an instant, he would be behind the enemy's back. The speed of this flight was different from ordinary air flight. The system again informed Hyun that he had not assimilated the information, and his cognitive skills had dropped to 31%. The demon said that if Heng could learn demon appearance and heavenly demon flight, he would be able to master the first 6 techniques of his cult, the destructive strikes of heaven, another transcendent skill. Now the demon was ready to display the third set of movements. His body spun like a hurricane. The system again informed Hyun that he had not assimilated the information, and his cognitive skills had dropped to 0%. Heng couldn't see him. The demon simply disappeared before his eyes. He ended up behind his back. This was the Heavenly Demon Soul Exit Technique, a special set of movements to end up behind the enemy. The fourth complex is the Heavenly Demon Soul Hurricane. The demon's body spun with incredible force. A strong wind came out of his body, a core was formed, and the demon stood outside it. The name was the whole point. The demon spun so fast that it created an elusive hurricane that devoured the enemy's soul, one of his favorite counterattack techniques. Hyun was shocked. He had never seen anything at that speed. How was he supposed to do it again? The demon said that if he mastered Soul Hurricane and Soul Exodus, the next 5 heaven-shattering strike techniques would become available to him. There were 12 techniques in total. And to study all 12, the minimum requirement is to know these 5 sets of techniques. And the demon proceeded to demonstrate the 5th complex, the ascension of the heavenly demon sovereign. The demon lifted his foot and slammed it on the ground. Hing flew away from the force of the impact. The demon only stepped on it once, and the whole earth disappeared from under his feet, and the world turned upside down. The demon ordered everyone to rise up and bow down before him. This is the whole point of the hierarchy. Meanwhile, a meeting was being held in the association building. The meeting members discussed the last raid, in which only 3 B-class hunters and 5 supports survived. Sergeant O'Day was killed. This is the association's 3rd raid on the portal on Mount Ilitch, but again they are defeated. Complaints were made to the intelligence corps, as the intelligence data on the portal did not provide correct information and classification. They began to argue, because if the portal's classification was correct, then why couldn't an expedition of 5 Class A and 11 Class B warriors conduct a sweep? Lee chimed in. She pointed out that they could at least fight each other, but that wouldn't solve the problem. But she had a solution. In his apartment, Hyun woke up from a terrible dream. He didn't understand how he ended up in his room. The demon scornfully declared that Hang was a disgrace. He fainted during training, unable to withstand the load, and therefore ended up at home. Gate is a skill that allows it to move through the air as if it were on the ground. If the demon showed its full power, Hyun would not survive. Hyun is not ready for this technique right now. He will need a boost of energy, or at least 120 years of training. The demon ordered to focus on increasing his energy potential. After that, it would be possible to begin studying the techniques. Hang did not object. In the evening at the association, Lee sat tired after a meeting. She reflected on its progress. She remembered that she had expressed the opinion that the association should cooperate with other associations. She meant cooperation with the Red Lions. Everyone was shocked. The meeting participants stood up, reminding them that they had already been granted the right to use the portals. If this is her way of working, then she should resign. For the association, portals have already become an object of trade. Lee was disappointed that her colleagues didn't understand what portal raiding was all about. None of them had ever been there in their lives. But despite everything, a new day has come. Hyun was happy because he received a salary for his work on the portal. He immediately paid the hospital bills for his brother Hyun Tae. After that, there was almost no money left, but he could sign a contract. All the guilds were eager to cooperate with him. Both the association and the Red Lions wanted to recruit him. Hyun would still have money in the future, so he could afford to buy ramen. Hyun jokingly suggested that Demon try it. The demon swung again for a counterattack, but Hyun managed to dodge. Still, he caught something about the celestial demon apparition, but the demon still hit him on the forehead so that he wouldn't be arrogant. Hen went into the store. Saleswoman Yoon greeted him happily. He asked if she also worked part-time on weekends. She confirmed, explaining that she had a little brother and sister and she had to help. Hyun offered to break the goods himself. He put the money at the cash register and left the store. The girl ran out after him, wanting to give him change. But he only told her to treat her family and buy them a chicken. This gesture was very sweet of her. The demon called him a thief, asking if he had really decided to buy the girl's heart with money. But she, like Hyun, lost her parents 2 years ago when the portals opened. Now she was raising her brother and sister alone. She sacrificed her education to earn a living for the family, just like him. The demon gave him a reassurance. It was not fitting for his disciple to sing his own praises. In his apartment, Hyun enjoyed incredibly delicious ramen. The demon couldn't believe it was so delicious. He wanted to try the ramen because it looked too appetizing for his non-physical body. Suddenly, he grabbed Han's hand, and his hand pulled the chopsticks to taste the noodles. Surprisingly, he managed to swallow the food. "So what is it, ramen? Truly one of the most delicious dishes in the whole world," thought the demon enthusiastically. The demon could only eat from his hands. Great. Now Hyung had to feed him, the disembodied teacher thought ironically. Heng was not thrilled with this prospect. Yun was walking home with a package of lunchboxes for the children, which they hadn't yet had time to unpack. But suddenly dozens of portals began to open on the road. Water gushed out of them, knocking all passers-by off their feet. And then horrible mermaid monsters crawled out of there. They began to attack people, piercing them with sharp harpoons. The dark figure of the main mermaid rose at the head. She declared that this world now belonged to them, and they would drive out all who had invaded it. And they will become its rulers. It slammed into the ground. The water parted, and a huge snake crawled out of the portal and attacked everyone. Hyun froze in horror. Meanwhile, Hyun trained with Demon. The demon thought, because this dimension was a desert, but he constantly felt a surge of energy. He wondered why he had come to this world through this place. Hyun stood up, feeling refreshed and energized after practicing energy circulation. He had been feeling very tense before. The circulation of energy not only increased energy potential, but also cleansed the flows of negative energy. Hyun joked that if he practiced this, he wouldn't need to see a doctor at all. The demon frowned, telling him not to talk nonsense. He ordered them to stand in position to begin practicing demon emergence and heavenly demon flight. Although Hyun's cognitive abilities were not up to par during his previous training, he was at least partially able to master these techniques thanks to his awakening. He wanted to try to repeat what he had memorized. Hang began to reproduce the movements. The demon was delighted, not expecting to do so well the first time. Meanwhile, panic reigned in the association. An alarm was sounded. There was an invasion of monsters in the Ilitch district, in Kangdong. Lee stood there, her thoughts tormenting her. She knew she had to join the Red Lions. If the crisis occurred in Gangdong, then the Isaac Guild is operating there, and its leader is the Panther Man, Choi. Hyun Woo. Lee ordered that she needed to be at the center of events, and all free fighters were sent to the battlefield. The Isaac Guild could not cope without outside help. Meanwhile, Hen and Demon emerged from the portal. The demon fell to the floor, sighing contentedly. After training, the teacher would like some refreshment. The student should make him some ramen. Hyun went off to make ramen, dissatisfied. The demon lay down and also asked to turn on this magic lantern from which the messenger speaks. Hyun turned on the TV. The news reported, Gangdong-gu is currently flooded and panicking. Fishmen have invaded the city and are killing citizens. They escaped from a portal in the Ilitch Mountains. Heng's face? Had the third raid also failed? The demon wondered if this was the same portal he had been to recently. It was him. Hyun shouted. This was the area where Yoon lived. In a second, he opened the door and rushed to the scene. He had to get to the rescue as quickly as possible. He stopped and began to think. He had been in the car too long. If he could run straight ahead, he would be there in 30 minutes. But there were houses in the way. So he decided to try out the Sky Demon flight. He crouched down and began to move across the ground with incredible speed. A few jumps and he was already level with the buildings. He jumped from roof to roof. The demon flew after him and watched. He was doing well. At the same time, panic reigned at the battlefield. The Black Panther Man was on the scene and fighting the mermaids. It was Choi. Hyun Woo, he bravely fought the enemies and ordered everyone to remain calm and fight confidently. A member of his guild assured him that he had everything under control. It was the local butcher, Ban Bo Gum. One of the monsters attacked him from behind and he barely managed to dodge. But suddenly there was an explosion and the monster burst into pieces. A blonde girl on a gyro scooter delivered a devastating blow with her bow. The fishmen right in the heads. Then they exploded, and one by one the fish exploded with them. It was a chemist archer from Gangdong. Ban nodded approvingly at her. But in a second, a huge beast bit off his head. The archer screamed and aimed at the monster. Choi rushed at her. He couldn't let her be eaten too. The huge snake now aimed at them. The head mermaid stood and watched everyone. The hunters were excellent prey. She laughed sinisterly. The more of them, the better for them. The monster almost grabbed Choi and the archer. It was approaching very quickly. Then, Hyun appeared in the sky. He wanted to use Tiger Squad on the left. It was a simple move, but if you put a charge of energy into it, it would be a devastating blow. With all your strength, Hyun jumped at the large snake. Choi and the archer were shocked by the force of this stranger's blow. The snake screamed terribly in pain and fell into the water. The couple couldn't believe their eyes. It had to be a C-class hunter to kill such a monster with one blow. However, Hung felt that the life energy of this snake had not yet died out. And he was right. The snake emerged from the water right at Hang. He dodged, and the snake hit the building with enormous force. However, the snake quickly recovered from the blow and aimed at Hang again. Hyun dodged his blows using Sky Demon Flight. The system reported that the technique was 40% mastered. Hang's body could barely withstand the strain. His legs ached unbearably from using this technique. The demon watched this, studying his movements carefully. He suggested to him that muscle strength could be increased many times over by properly distributing energy. Hang understood and was ready to apply this. Meanwhile, Lee was driving in the car, very nervous. Traffic jams and crowded subways prevented her from reaching the battlefield quickly. At the same time, she watched a live broadcast by one of the viewers. There, an unknown hunter was desperately fighting a huge monster. She was shocked, because this hunter that no one knew about was Hyun Su. She couldn't stand it and got out of the car. With determination in her eyes, she ran to the scene of the battle. Meanwhile, Hyun used the knowledge he had gained to the fullest. He adapted the flight of the heavenly demon to himself and inflicted significant damage. The flight was 30% mastered. If this had been a test, his shot would have scored no less than 1,300 points. The snake's weakest point was its chin. The demon told Hyun to get as close as possible to the chin and deliver a devastating uppercut. The chief mermaid also did not take her eyes off the battle. She raised her hands up and asked the chief lord to send her his power. This hunter was dangerous to her. He had to be killed immediately. Hang found himself right under the snake's chin. His end seemed inevitable. But then the snake suddenly sped up, and Hang didn't have time to strike in the right place. The snake struck him with its powerful tail, and Hang flew into the wall. The main mermaid cried out joyfully, begging her lord to give the snake more strength. The snake's eyes flashed with ominous fire and aimed at Hang. The demon instantly realized that it was the sorceress supporting the monsters with her healing magic, and that was a completely different matter. The witch screamed shrilly that this world would belong to them. The demon had never felt such a strong desire to intervene. If he were material, he would turn everyone to dust. But he had to save his student. Suddenly, an imperious shout rang out, ordering everyone to stand in their places. It was Hayurak. She was ready to join the fight. She turned to Hyun and asked mockingly if things were bad. She was all ablaze with determination. He was defending the city. He was a good man. If he had known about the witch earlier, perhaps he would have won. Her eyes were burning, and she said that as a future guild member, she was telling him that from now on, she would handle it herself. Her body flared up with even brighter flames. The witch turned around. They didn't expect such a strong mortal. Ha quickly rushed into battle. The demon instantly carried Heng's unconscious body away from the battlefield. It was not an escape, but a strategic retreat. Yun, meanwhile, was desperately fighting off the mermaids. She screamed and cried, begging for help. Then one of them exploded. It was Choi and the archer. Yun thanked them, feeling saved. The archer put her on her gyro scooter and took her to shelter, while Choi went to look for survivors. Meanwhile, Hyung regained consciousness. He didn't understand what had happened, or how he had ended up here, and his body ached unbearably. The demon explained that the snake was controlled by a witch, and if it weren't for her, he would have won, but instead he was defeated. Hang protested, taking it as an escape. But Demon reiterated that it was a strategic retreat, but there was nothing to worry about now. The demon glanced at the battlefield, where Ha had come to Hyun's aid. Yurak. However, Hang protested, this snake is his prey, and he will not let anyone take it. The demon quickly subdued Hang's ardor. With one blow, he knocked him to the floor. With such an exhausted body, there was no question of fighting. He needed to meditate and restore the circulation of energy. Then the demon wondered who this warrior was. It was the leader of the Red Lions Guild, Ha Yurak. The demon thought for a moment. It wouldn't take her much effort to deal with these two monsters. But Hyun stood up anyway. If he started this thing, he had to finish it. However, Demon insisted that Hyun's body couldn't handle it. Hyun mustered up the courage. He lost his parents to monsters like these. His brother is in the hospital because of them. He gained strength from his teacher and did not want to give up halfway. Hong was ready to continue the fight. The demon looked at him. He saw talent in him, but he didn't expect such a strong fighting spirit. He looked into his eyes, the same eyes but with fire in them. However, the demon had a solution to this problem. He warned that this method has serious consequences. Meanwhile, Ha Yurak continued the fierce battle. She dealt the snake one devastating blow after another. Fighting on water was not her style. She looked around, trying to find the witch. We returned to Hing. There, the demon was pouring his energy into him. It was an opportunity for him to get a taste of the power that would await him in the future. Infusing energy, he explained that his time was limited, that he was mortal, and it was better not to climb the spit. Khan Yurak fought with all her might. Her body was on fire, and the water around her was boiling. She was ready to fry this snake. At the same time, Hyun tried to become stronger. Khan dealt the snake a devastating blow. The head witch watched the battle and said that the Lord would be angry. They did not expect to meet someone equal to them here. She raised her hands to ask the Lord for strength again. But Khan was ready. She knew the snakes were in danger, and she understood why the witch had come. Khan aimed her blow at the sorceress. Explosion! The witch screamed in pain. The snake also began to lose energy. At the same time, the demon's energy poured into Heng's body. His body glowed with blue fire. He was burning with power. The system reported that he had temporarily awakened the ability Heavenly Demon Body. Khan, meanwhile, had almost dealt with the snake and wanted to finish it off. Taking off her shoes, she jumped into the air to deliver the final blow. But at that moment, the snake opened its mouth and fire burst out of it. Khan was caught in a stream of flames, struck and thrown against a wall. After that, she fell from a height into the water. Meanwhile, a helicopter flew over the battlefield. The person on board reported that the evacuation of people was complete. Khan continued to dive into the water, but upon hearing this, her eyes lit up. She squirmed, but her body was on fire. She came to her senses, realizing that she was one of 9 C-class hunters on this planet. It emerged from the water, surrounded by huge flames, and blew up all the buildings around it. The snake now had nowhere to hide. She was ready. The snake had to be dead. But suddenly someone stopped her by grabbing her hand. It was Hyun. Lee was still rushing to the battlefield, and her only worry was that Hyun Su might not be able to handle it on his own due to his lack of combat experience. Running past the store window, she noticed heavy cast iron dumbbells. Once inside, Lee quickly purchased one. Without wasting any time, Lee threw the kettlebell behind her back, then lifted it into the air. She started to spin it above her head. Then she grabbed the handle tightly and, using an unknown force, lifted herself off the ground along with the weight and flew swiftly to help. We went back to the scene where Hyun was holding Han's hand. She didn't understand why he had come. But it was Heng who wanted to finish off the snake. It won't work out. Han is also pissed off about him. But if Hyun promises to join the guild, she'll let him do it. He let go of her hand. He was ready to finish the snake. Khan looked at him. She knew he was strong, but right now he was as taut as a string. Heng took action and moved away, leaving only a few lights behind him. Khan screamed. She didn't even notice him move. He was already approaching the snake and was ready to deliver a devastating blow from the heavens, the first level. He hit the monster with tremendous force. Then he continued to strike one after another. The snake fell to the ground. However, he was still ready to pounce on Heng. He used a new technique, burning the nose. Hyun gathered, devastating blows from the heavens, second level. Then burning the root, the snake fell to the ground again. The demon had ritually increased his stamina to immense heights, but he didn't understand how he had also captured part of the celestial demon's muscle memory, which had been passed down from generation to generation. Heng competed with the snake on an equal footing. He used the flight of a celestial demon. His movements were clear and fast. He replaced the technique with destructive strikes from the sky, level 3. Burning leaves. A lot of fire erupted from the snake's body from the wounds inflicted. The whole creature exploded. The snake was defeated. Han held her breath. Lee appeared next to her. She also couldn't believe her eyes. Her eyes were burning. She spoke. It was really Hyun Su. The system reported that the temporary awakening of abilities has been stopped. His body felt a lot of pressure and he coughed up blood, then fell to the ground. The girls rushed to his aid. The demon was happy, mentally noting that Hyun had captured 2 beauties. The water began to recede. Hyun returned home to her brother and sister. They were all crying and happy to have each other. The archer took her home and asked her how the situation was on the battlefield. There, Choi said that the situation was gradually improving. The leader of the Red Lions was dealing with the witch. As for the snake, it was defeated by an unknown hunter. The water level dropped to 0 almost everywhere. The archer reported that security had passed and Yoon could rest easy, asking her to take care of herself. In the hospital ward, Hyun regained consciousness. The demon pestered him, asking if he would rise, and Hen didn't understand how he ended up in the hospital. The demon insisted that he didn't remember anything at all, and explained that he had lost consciousness after devastating blows from the heavens. The demon shouted, "How could he punish the rude hunter who dared to use his devastating blows from the heavens at random?" But then 2 smiling girls came to him, Lee and Han. Hyun was shocked by their appearance. But in the meantime, the battle was not over yet. The hunters continued to fight the monsters. At the moment, the association and guild were engaged in searching for and finishing off the remaining mermaids. The reporter interviewed Choi, Hee, and Yu and asked how he could comment on the situation. He said that they are clearing the area and special attention is being paid to the sewer tunnels. The townspeople can rest assured. They will find all the fishmen. Heng was still in the hospital. 2 girls took care of him as best they could. One cut an apple, the other fed him. Then Han told Mina C to show him something, and Lee took out a dark box. There lay a strange red pill. Hen and the demon held their breath. This was his reward, the monster's heart, the elixir. The demon had never encountered an elixir of such incredible power. Monster hearts are a substance that remains after the death of a sufficiently ancient monster. It contains great power. If you eat it, your stats will increase significantly. For a low-class hunter, such a heart would give you a 1-class boost. Khan said that the snake wasn't that strong, but if it had a heart like that, it must be very old. This elixir contained 500 years of energy. Heng asked why they were giving him such an incredible artifact. They said to count on them. They were just being kind. The girls started arguing among themselves about who owned this artifact. Lee started to explain that Hyun still needed to know how to properly take this elixir, but Han interrupted her and said that as a C-class hunter, she knew better. They argued with each other about who knew better. The demon laughed, calling it a fight between tigresses. He asked Hyun who he would marry, and he screamed. The girls looked at him in surprise. Han decided to leave the office. Lee stayed. She said that they had made changes to the contract, and this was his chance. In the future, such conditions might not exist. Lee had to hurry. Hyun could rise to sea level very quickly, and if she recruited him, the association's reputation would be saved. However, Hyun did not sign the contract. She left the office and said that now it was Han Yurak's turn. She came in and stood in front of Hyun, and then she hit his bed with her fist. Then she sat down nicely and asked if he liked the association's offer. The demon felt that these two sorceresses would have convinced him to join, even though he didn't need to. He thought about it. She wondered what conditions he was offered. Probably immunity from criminal liability for murder. Hyun wondered how she understood that. It was obvious he would soon rise to Class C, and such people don't need immunity. The power in their time does not belong to those who had nuclear weapons or money. The power belongs to them, the C-class hunters. And who will give them immunity or rights? This is just ridiculous. The only thing he still needed before he could become a C-class hunter was mentorship. Mentoring of the Red Lions Guild leader Ha Yurak. She left the office and wished Director Lee good luck. But she went back into the office. She understood everything, said she understood everything and wouldn't force him, and wished him rest and recovery. But Hyun stopped her with a question. He wanted to ask something. He was ashamed to ask her for anything, but he was so beaten up that he couldn't even stand up. He wanted to ask the association to do him a favor. Hyun opened the door and told her brothers and sister to get up. It was the weekend. She had to go to work soon. They lazily got up and left. They were just as lazily brushing their teeth and complaining about why they couldn't sleep yet. But then, in the filled bathtub, a mermaid's voice was heard, saying that the inhabitants of this world would not survive. A scream was heard from the bathtub, and Yoon turned around. The big monster and the scared children ran out of the bathtub. The monster grabbed Sister Yoon. He wanted to eat her. Yoon grabbed the knife and attacked the monster, screaming. She plunged the knife into the monster's body. It did almost no harm to the monster. He threw her away with a single wave of his hand. She fell and hit the wall. The monster squeezed his sister tighter and brought her to his mouth. He was going to eat her sister. But then a woman with a kettlebell flew into the house, screaming for them to stop. She hit the monster with a kettlebell. The sister flew out of the monster's hands. The monster quickly rose and aimed at the woman. She picked up the debris and aimed it at him. All the fragments flew into him. Blood flowed from the wounds, but it didn't do much damage. It was Lee, who was already gathering energy in her hands. She shot him and his head exploded. Lee checked to see if Yoon was okay. Yoon thanked Lee with tears in her eyes and asked how she knew about it. Lee said that Hyung asked her about it. At the hospital, the doctors surrounded Hyun and were amazed. He was recovering very quickly and his movements were in question. His body, although still heavy, no longer hurt. He tore the cast off his leg. Everyone panicked. Despite the fact that he was a hunter, such a quick recovery was surprising. He went to the registration desk to be discharged from the hospital. There he was told that the Red Lions Guild had already paid all the bills and he could leave. The demon was also pleased. This woman Ha Yurak took good care of her people. Hyun decided to check the account, because after paying his bills, she probably didn't have much money left. He screamed at what he saw. There was a number with a lot of zeros. 600 million? Hyun couldn't believe it. It was just the initial contribution. The demon looked at Hyun, wondering if Hyun had lost his mind from the number of zeros, but he simply didn't know what it was like to be poor. He didn't know what it was like to see ramen in stores every day and not be able to buy it, and the demon's saliva flowed. He grabbed Hyun by the jacket and they took off. They had a serious matter to deal with. Hyuna urgently needed to make ramen for the teacher. In the apartment, They entered the portal again to continue training. The demon said that absorbing 10% of the elixir would give him an energy boost equal to 20 years. If he mastered the demon's technique, the figure would increase to 70%, which equaled 140 years. The demon asked what he would do with that much power. Yoon said that 2 years ago, he and Ha Yoon lost their parents to the effects of portals. Now he was a hunter and could not let anyone go through such grief. The demon wondered, perhaps the opening of the portals was the arrival of the great horde that his ancestors had told him about. He asked if Hyun remembered the techniques the demon taught Hyun during their last fight. Celestial demons pass down their divine skills from generation to generation. This skill was initiated by the first celestial demon. He said that all this was for the sake of one day repelling the great horde. One problem is that the prediction is not from the demon dimension, and so it was. And that was another reason for the demon's desire to return as soon as possible. Meanwhile, Lee arrived at the specified address on her way. Hyun's house, she was calling him. He was no longer sick, but he didn't pick up the phone from her. She didn't know what to do, but she had to tell Yoon about what happened in her apartment as soon as possible. In the portal, the demon was shouting at Heng. He held the elixir in his hand and did not know how to swallow it. The demon hit him and told him to eat, not swallow. The demon said that without his help, he would probably just eat this elixir and get nothing from it. Hyun took the first bite. Lee wanted to open the door. It was open. She went into the apartment and started looking everywhere for Hyun Su. She stopped in front of the portal. In the portal, Heng struggled to take a bite of the elixir. The demon ordered him to steady his heartbeat and listen to it. If he made a mistake, he would feel bad. He would live, but he would never get up again. The demon suggested that we should start by stopping perceiving the elixir as food and tuning into energy. Then, when he grasps it with his inner vision, he slowly moves it first to the dantian, and then to the Weilu point, a healing point of the human body. Then, very slowly, it had to be moved to the Baihui point. Lee stood in the apartment, getting ready to leave, wondering how long she had to leave the room without cleaning it for mold to grow on the wall. She took the bowl and the tools, put on gloves, and wanted to start cleaning. But then she got a call and was told that the general manager of the department, and she would be there soon. She glanced at the mess again, but she couldn't stay any longer and rushed into the office. In the portal, the demon said that now it was necessary to move the energy of the elixir into the inner shell of this pill. He sat and followed all the prompts. The energy of the slain snake's heart, strangely enough, turned out to be fiery energy. The portals indeed contained monsters of incredible power. The martial art of the heavenly demon is the quintessence of yang energy. Sitting now and changing the energy was in Hyun's favor, because sooner or later the techniques would have to change the polarity to yang. The system reported that the absorption rate of the elixir substance was 32%. When the elixir had completely dissolved in his energy, it was necessary to concentrate it back into his inner shell and prevent it from escaping. He sat and did everything. The system reported that the absorption level of the elixir substance was 50%. Hannah began to burst with energy. The seed of the power of the heavenly demon was sprouting inside it. The system reported that the absorption rate of the elixir substance was 60%. Hyung was already having a hard time holding back his energy. The system reported that the absorption rate of the elixir substance was 70%. He went into a deep trance. Blood flowed from his eyes. The system reported that the absorption level of the elixir substance was 80%. Blood flowed from the eyes, nose, and mouth. The system reported that the absorption rate of the elixir substance was 90%. The demon was proud. He was ready to help him with the last 10%. He folded his hands and called forth the primordial Ki energy release. Hyun started coughing up blood. The demon helped as best he could, and Han's body was filled with great energy. The system reported that he had completely absorbed the elixir substance. His body reached the peak of yang energy. He gained immunity to thermal effects. The ability to follow cues was improved. A new effect was obtained. He could study the techniques of any individual once a day. Heng's body fell to the ground. Meanwhile, panic was brewing at the hospital. There, who had suffered from fishman attacks. There wasn't even anywhere to go. She went into Yoon's room. Lee asked if she knew that her brother and sister had been transferred due to a lack of beds. They haven't come to their senses yet. It was one of the strange symptoms after the fishman attack, but Lee was confident that the doctors would do everything they could to help them. She left the office and called Hyun again. He didn't pick up the phone again. Lee thought she didn't understand what was happening because Yoon was the one who suffered the most. She could understand why her sister hadn't woken up yet, because she could have fainted from fear. The fishman didn't touch her brother. What was it that had put them both in a coma? At the Red Lions Guild, an assistant reported that the damage to the city was estimated at 1 billion won. 117 people were injured, and more were arriving every minute. And doctors noticed an inexplicable condition in those who arrived after the Fishman attack. People fell into comas. Doctors have not yet found the cause of this condition. He left and Ha remained in her office. She dialed Hyun, but he didn't answer. She was angry. He just joined the guild and he doesn't answer calls anymore. And this is after she dumped his salary of 600 million. We moved to the ES Guild. Haxon Balder, a C-class hunter and the leader of this guild, asked if the Red Lions Guild had taken Hain after all. Jill Lordeman, a C-class hunter, the only one of the hunters not affiliated with any guild, said that he was quite impressive for a newcomer. Haxon wondered how she had managed to capture him. He would have killed him, his comrade reassured him. Don't talk nonsense. It's better to live without war for now. He would rather kill him than let the guild use him. They were watching the recording of Heng's battle. The landscape of a hot sunny day near the beach opened up before us. Hyun was lying on a deck chair, covered by an umbrella from the sun. Then someone lightly scratched his head. It was Lee, who felt sorry for him, because he must have been tired by now. But Ha interrupted them, asking how long they could sleep in. The girls wanted to play volleyball. The girl threw the ball and said that whoever loses pays for lunch. The ball flew with all its force into Hyun's face. The girls laughed. He couldn't even hit that serve, but it was the first time in his life. Hyun came to his senses and went to pick up the ball that had fallen into the water. But then the water around the ball began to sink and gurgle. A huge snake crawled out from under this film. He shouted for Heng to return his elixir. The demon began to breathe fire underwater. It was most likely an underwater lava flow. The water was like boiling water. He fell deeper and deeper into the water. The depth was pulling him in. And then Hen woke up. The demon figure was already looming over him, and he said that since Hyung had woken up, he should quickly make him ramen. He also pointed to the clock. The hand had already passed 12 times while he was asleep. Did Hun sleep for 2.5 days? The association's office opened before us. There, an excited Lee was talking on the phone. She yelled at Han for drinking the elixir on his own because he could have died if he didn't follow the procedure. Then at the Red Lion's office, Ha was also shocked that Hyun ate the monster's heart and just slept for 2 days. She said there was nothing she could do about him, and she was grateful that he was at least alive. Ha reacted much calmer than he expected. He made ramen and promised to be in touch. His chopsticks just missed the demon's mouth. Hen became interested in the system. His level of following cues rose to level 3. He was very happy. He had a new ability. He could learn the techniques of the specified person once a day. Specified person, Cheon-yen. The demon didn't believe it. Hen could perform a technique he hadn't been taught once a day. He didn't even know if such a thing existed. The demon wanted to punch him. He dodged, but it still hit him. The demon didn't understand how he had learned to dodge his blows. Then Hyun went to the hospital. There he went to visit Yoon. Yoon cried, "What if her family never regains consciousness?" Hyung supported her, saying they would definitely come, and he and Yoon were similar. They went to visit Ha-yeon Tae's younger brother. He was also in the same hospital. He had not regained consciousness since the car crash. The doctors couldn't explain why. Yoon took his hand, saying, "Poor Tae." She introduced herself to him and said that his brother had done a lot for him. She said that Hyun was really looking forward to his return. She asked him to come back sooner. The demon felt a strange energy coming from his brother. A curse was sealed upon his heart. There was one way to get around it, but we moved to the place where the auction was being held. The girl showed the spear and said that the starting price was 70 million won, asking who was willing to pay more for the skeleton spear. The black-haired man raised his hand. It was the leader of the Aegis Guild, Choi, Jae Hyek Nim. The price was raised to 80 million. Then Jin-chi Hyok Nim raised his hand. The price was overstated. Then, in the parking lot, Jin hid his purchase, satisfied with a productive day. He was called out by Choi. He asked if he was normal, paying 200 million won for something that only cost 70 million. He said that he wouldn't regret 300 million for something like that. Jin continued by saying that if Choi is clutching his heart at just one look at the 200 million price tag, then what is he even doing at the auction? He's better off sitting at home eating ramen. Choi couldn't stand it and kicked Jin in the back. Was he really tired of living? Jin unpacked the spear and was about to test it on the one who was climbing the spit. Choi's hands were covered in metal. He was ready to show that this thing was worth no more than 70 million. Jin attacked Choi and threatened to kill him. However, Choi hit Jin in the face with one punch and threw him far away. Choi said no one has ever walked away alive after beating him at an auction. After that, there was a conflict in the Red Lions Guild. Ha yelled at Choi for how much trouble he could cause. She was inundated with complaints coming through him, and she asked how long he wanted to keep this up. Choi said he couldn't help but get angry because Jin just came and took the item from him at the auction. Ha shut him up, warning him that if he continued, she wouldn't stand on ceremony. If he causes trouble again, she won't crucify him. She'll tear him to pieces and then drown him. She ordered him to leave. He quickly left and closed the door behind him. And then he turned around and said, "But when was she going to introduce him to this new A-rank hunter?" He explained that he wasn't trying to establish a hierarchy or anything like that. She shouted for him to get out of there. Choi left, most likely he would meet him soon. At the hospital, Hyun came to visit Yoon and told her that he had now become a hunter. He said he didn't know when to tell her because the awakening didn't have a fixed date. He also added that he wanted to visit everyone in the hospital and that she also had a good rest. Then Hyun stood over Hyun Tai's body with the demon. Hang asked if there was any way to help his brother. The demon told him about the chopped heavenly tongue. Hyun was excited, but he couldn't use this technique right now. It was a secret technique, a type of sorcery created by one of the celestial demons. Hung could not use it because he did not possess the body of a celestial demon. However, Hyun said that he would be able to use this technique because his level of listening to instructions had increased. He can perform one of his techniques once a day, and Hyun quickly moved his hand over his brother's body. The cutting heavenly tongue. The technique worked. It really worked. The demon didn't understand how this could work, what kind of possibility it was. The seal placed itself on the brother's body and began to remove the spell from the brother's body. Hyun needed to increase the flow of ki. His brother's heart began to beat faster. He tried his best. The couple was walking from everywhere. But it was rejected with all its might. It didn't work. The demon said that he felt the presence of an incredibly powerful creature and that Hyun shouldn't be upset. He just didn't have enough strength yet. At the same time, a discussion was taking place in the ES Guild. Jill was shouting that they needed all the strong hunters right now. Haxon was silent. Jill would not be able to destroy Han. His mind would not change, no matter how many times he repeated it. Yamamoto Takashi, a C-rank hunter and vice leader of the ES Guild, walked in the door. He came back and didn't understand why there was so much noise. Then Yamamoto only talked to Jill. That's why Yamamoto didn't want to work with Haxon. Jill asked about a certain fragment. Yamamoto said it wasn't the same as last time. This time it was just a desert. Then they thought, maybe it's worth looking for a fragment in Korea. Since it's entrusted to the Red Lions, we'll have to wait and see. The appearance of that hunter, Park Hyun Su, could advance the search for Fragment A. If the boss of paradise is the ancestor of dragons, then the portals are scattered all over the world. This is a fragment of paradise. Collecting all the fragments in a year is tantamount to a curse. But if people think that's the end of it, they are very mistaken. If people do not collect all the fragments within a year, this world will face such grief that even C ranks will not be able to overcome it. Yamamoto said that they need to find the fragments within a year, no matter what it costs, so they need to gather more high-ranking hunters. At the hospital, Hyun visited his brother and sister Yoon. The doctor said they had done everything they could. There was nothing more they could do except put a heating pad on. The doctor said that there were many such patients in this ward. The woman on the side was also crying and asking when her husband would wake up. The demon said that the reason was cold energy and asked if all these people had met water creatures, yin energy within them. And these aquatic animals possessed very strong yin energy. This is why those with high yin energy cannot accept it. Yang energy and the yin energy of the water collide. They conflict and become cold energy, and they hibernate. Hang asked if there was any way to cure them. The demon said that by using yang energy to remove yin energy, then they might wake up. Hyun picked up his brother, the woman on the side yelling that wherever he was taking them, they needed to be in stable condition. The child next to the woman said she recognized him. He was the Emuji killer. Hyun put his hand on his brother's body and began to let in his yang energy. The cold energy began to evaporate. The demon shouted that this was the moment to burn the yin energy. Hyun suggested that he could absorb this energy. The demon shouted that Heng's body was at the extreme yang and what might happen to his body if he absorbed it. Heng tried to get the cold energy. The system reported that he had managed to absorb the yin power. His body went from extreme yang to harmony of yin and yang. The demon was shocked. Could he witness the peak of the three flowers blooming? Although it was only for a second, the demon was sure he was able to see Hyun reach the peak stage of the three-leaf blossom in a trance. Hyun wondered what a body with harmony of yin and yang meant. The demon didn't understand how his body could even produce such a thing. And then the brother opened his eyes. Everyone around was in shock. He recognized Hyun. The woman called the doctors. They watched what Hen was doing. He pulled the dark energy out of his sister. She woke up. Hyun stood and cried when she was told this. In the hospital, the number of patients in comas was growing so rapidly that there were not enough beds. Lee had to ask the head of the department to increase the number of beds. Then she got a call from Ha, who told her about what Hyun had done. He also brought the father and husband of the woman in the ward to consciousness. The system reported that he had reached level 1 of the body with harmony of yin and yang. To obtain a body of complete harmony, one must achieve the energy of harmony of extreme yin and yang. The woman with tears in her eyes thanked Hyun for his actions. The doctors took Heng to other wards. The demon was happy. He said that as a heavenly demon, he should get used to people exalting and praising him. Ha called him. Yurak, she said she knew he was in the hospital. The association sent them a request for help in hospitals. It wasn't for nothing. They sent a check for help, and Hyun could take it all. She said that if he does something of his own free will and it has nothing to do with the guild, all the money is his. It's written in the contract. It was a compliment from the guild, as the association was now under their control. At night, at the ES Guild, Hoxon was approached and told that they had found out where Park Hyun Su lived. He stood up and waited for the address. Then he went outside, fully prepared, and flew like a bullet to the specified address. The next morning, Demon again ordered Hyun to make him ramen. But then he got a call from Hayurak. He didn't understand why his head was bothering him so early. She ordered him to flee the house very quickly. The demon felt that something very powerful was approaching. Hyun ran out of his apartment. He saw a bright comet in the sky. This line landed on the ground. The air around this man caught fire and the wind went to Heng. Hoxon stood with an angry look. He found Heng. He swung and shouted for him to prepare to die. He threw a ball of energy directly at Hyun. The bullet missed and there was a big explosion and a lot of smoke. An alarm bell rang in the association. As expected, an unidentified living organism was currently in the area where Park Hyun Su was. Lee thought that supersonic speed was rare even among C ranks. Most likely it was. Ha agreed that it could be Hak-san. He hated Ha to the core of his soul, and she was the only one who could stop him. Lee was also supposed to go. But the CEO stopped Lee and did not give her permission to go. Apparently, there will be a battle of C-rank hunters there. There is no point in her going there. The association will not stay away either. They had already asked the Azure Dragon unit to begin preparations for using the divine item, Mirror World. The unit was racing at full speed. They had to prepare. This was a completely different level than what had happened before. One huntress asked Falcon if the divine object was with him. He confirmed and said he was already running. Then Sokol jumped off the roof, and suddenly his head became a falcon's and his wings spread. Haxon watched Hyun. Who would have thought that he would gain yin power? It seems he has reached the realm of evolution, one of the realms found in the Murim worlds. The demon looked at Haxon. He felt greater power than from Ha. At the extreme, he reached the realm of the highest peak from where the demon himself came. Heng shouted why this hunter appeared out of nowhere and attacked him. He was distracted by loud noises, wondering if there had been an accident somewhere off to the side. He shouted to everyone around him to get up and run away. The demon ordered to concentrate. He had a battle. Hoxon used the art of flowers. Hyun dodged. The same technique wouldn't work on him. But Hoxon was already behind Heng and was ready to apply the body transformation. His hand began to become covered in metal. Hyun was shocked. Just now he was shooting energy bullets, and now he was using metal. How many abilities did he have? Hack crouched in a fighting stance and was ready to deliver a supersonic swing. He struck, and a large shockwave flew straight at Heng. He blocked, but the blow was so strong that he couldn't stay on his feet. He was carried away by the shockwave and fell to the ground. Hyun couldn't feel his right hand. Who would have thought that he would end up like this even after receiving internal energy? Hack came at him again, a supersonic blow of 5 Mach. The demon reminded him that he had been learning the celestial demon's movement for nothing. And Hyun started moving, celestial demon movement level 2, then celestial demon flight. Now it was his turn and time to strike. Hyun struck, and there was a loud explosion afterwards. But Hyun flew out of the building and hit another wall with great force. Meanwhile, Ha was approaching the battlefield. She didn't know if they had met yet, and she wondered how long Hyun would last. 10 seconds? 20 seconds? Most likely it could all be over in a moment. She had to hurry. Haksan approached Hyun's body. He thought he could handle him in one blow. The demon analyzed. Even though his student's level of understanding was not that high regarding demon techniques, Haksan was able to strike at Heng's real body with the first strike. But if he cannot overcome this test, he will not be able to grow up as a heavenly demon. Haksun was amazed at how long Hong had lasted. He raised his hand and was ready to deliver the final blow. Hyun didn't understand what he was talking about. He wasn't ready to give up, and his body began to accumulate energy. He clenched his fist and struck the seed. There was another big explosion. Haksun flew a few meters away. He didn't expect the blow to be so strong. It destroyed one of his metal arms, but in a second he used the silver pulse and restored his hand. The demon was shocked. His recovery was at the level of domain monsters. The demon suggested, "Do not let him rest and use the blow of the tree to destroy him." And Heng did it all again. Heng was ready to slowly destroy each of Haksun's transmutations. But in a second, he turned into a water ball. Hyun didn't expect to see water either. Hak evaporated from the impact of the tree. The demon said his energy was still there. He was still alive. Underneath him. And Haksun really found himself under it. His hands now had blades on them, and he was a millimeter away from his leg. Hung barely had time to dodge. A split second later, he moved again. And now he was behind Heng, swinging his blade. But Heng was ready. The same thing wouldn't happen to him the second time. He used a blow from the letter and cut it. The balloon that was on Haksun's body flew far away. Blood appeared on his body, but he was still able to recover quickly. Hyun wanted to use a series of attacks, but it was too dangerous, too many people. But today was a day off. He had to get to school. Since this place was on an elevation, he could minimize the possible damage as much as possible. Haksun was still recovering, even though he had used the silver pulse, but the wound was serious and had not yet fully healed. Haksun folded his hands behind his head. In a second, he disappeared, leaving only dust behind. Hyun was already running through the school corridors. Haksun was catching up with him. He understood that he was trying to protect the others, and Haksun flew into the wall, deliberately causing damage to the school. He started shouting that those who compete in residential areas couldn't be hunters. And Haksun found himself behind Heng again. He struck, and the surrounding walls were badly damaged. Almost the entire building was damaged. Haksun looked down at the hole several stories high left by his impact. He even felt sorry for killing Hyun. He didn't think he would last this long. Hyun found himself from the top floor to the bottom. Haksun gathered his energy again and targeted Heng, deciding to blame his boss for this. And a dark ball of energy flew into the unconscious Heng. A blow. And again there was a huge explosion. The blow was of incredible force. Haksun landed on the ground. Everything within a 2-meter radius was destroyed. Haksun said that this country is really bad with skill evaluation. Hyun is no longer A rank but C rank. Haksun was ready to leave, but then he heard a noise from under the rubble. From them arose Heng. His body was burning with energy. He surprised Haksun again. This only gave him confidence. He was ready to incinerate Heng. Haksun raised his hand to strike, but at one point his hand went out. His bullet energy disappeared. Something like this had never happened before. In any case, Haksun's body could not yet fully function. But the dark and angry figure of Hen was already looming before him. This should have been the end. Haksun punched, but Heng dodged, and struck back with tremendous force, knocking Haksun back. Heng shouted again. Heavenly destroying demonic fists, the second technique is Seed Strike. The blow hit Haksun with tremendous force and threw him back into the wall. His hand still appeared from the wreckage. Heng was ready. We flashed back 5 days. In the portal, Hyun and the demon continued their training, practicing hand-to-hand combat. Hyun tried with all his might to aim at the demon, but it constantly dodged his attacks. And then the demon struck a blow of incredible force that threw Heng back. They then began to meditate to master the inner energy. The demon ordered Hyun to listen while he circulated the energy within his body. He has both the seed of the celestial demon and the incredible internal energy of the emoji, but he did not know how to use them correctly. It was true. Hyun gained more internal energy, but he didn't feel like he had become stronger, except for high-level recovery. The demon advised thinking of it as a deep well. A strong person could bring water hundreds of times, and a weak person wouldn't be able to lift it even once. But the water in the well would not dry up. Hyun realized that he needed to become stronger to use his energy. The demon said that the training that would help him become stronger and use all his inner energy was competing in real fights. A victory over a strong opponent is better than 100 training sessions. And now Haksun stands before Haeon, his first truly strong opponent. Haksun lifted his body, which was almost completely covered in metal for protection. Hyun thought he was a monster if he could stand on his feet after being hit twice with the seed. On the other hand, Hyun's entire body felt like it was burning from this enemy attack. Haksun said, "Who would have thought that Heng would be able to hit him so hard, No wonder the Red Lions wanted to take him for themselves. Haksun prepared to attack, demonstrating his strength. Although he was called an astral mage, he was also capable of close combat. He ran straight at Heng to use his devastating attack, 5 swings. He hit Heng, causing him severe pain. Hyun writhed in pain and flew back from the powerful blow. Immediately behind him was Haksun, ready to deliver the fatal blow and take his head. The demon watched the fight and ordered Han to gather his strength because his head could explode from the next blow. Hint from the demon. Use the soul of the celestial demon to dodge. The system reported that the demon's soul comprehension level was 65%. He had to pass this test. We returned to training in the portal, where Hyun was trying to master a new technique. For Hyun to master the soul of the celestial demon and its capabilities. The demon said he should think of it this way. The first step is to take one step back and let his mind go through that point. Hyun repeated the movement, but he hardly fully understood the principle of the technique. When Haksun was almost saying goodbye to Hyun, he suddenly used the soul of the celestial demon. He took a step back and his mind also reacted instantly, so Haksun failed to grab him. Haksun was surprised, because Hyun had literally just been next to him and suddenly flew towards him at great speed. Then a great wave of energy suddenly blinded the world around, and this powerful energy quickly rushed over Haksun's body, stunning him. Smoke quickly enveloped Haksun's body, and he did not understand what was happening around him. Hen suddenly flew out, ready to attack. Haksun didn't have time to block a surprise strike from Heng, who used a wood punch. There was another powerful explosion of energy from the clash of their forces. Haksun stood undamaged after the explosion, which was incredible. This was impossible, as Hyun used all of his strength to drain the water from his energy well. Now it was Haksun's turn to attack back. He brought his sharp blade right over Heng's throat, preparing to deliver the fatal blow. Painful battle opened before us, where a fighter was ready to finish off a powerful demon. It was a young celestial demon who was desperately fighting a huge and ferocious monster. The monster was jubilant, as the demon had already used up most of its incredible energy. He didn't understand how the demon was going to overcome him in this state. The celestial demon swore on the honor of his fallen comrades that he would tear his skin and eat it to appease their souls. The monster confidently said that he could give a person a chance to become his right hand and conquer the world together. But the demon did not want to listen to his bold suggestions. He was determined to fight on. The monster did not understand the demon's stubbornness because he had already used up all of his strength. However, the demon martial arts could harness the energy of nature even without internal strength. The demon soared high into the air, displaying its majestic celestial spirit body. The townspeople had already gathered around the almost completely destroyed school, and no one understood the terrible events. A special unit of uniforms finally reached the site of the destruction, which had to act with the utmost caution. They quickly assessed the horrific situation. The entire area had been completely destroyed by heavy fighting. The hunters cautiously made their way through the dangerous ruins, trying to get as close as possible. They heard that the object that was dangerous to them wanted to capture Park Hyun Su and assumed that he was already dead. What they saw with their own eyes plunged them into deep shock as Haksun and Heng continued their fierce battle. They simultaneously struck each other with devastating blows of incredible force. Both fighters fell to the ground, and Hyun asked in surprise why the man had appeared out of nowhere and suddenly attacked him. Haksun laughed cheekily, pretending to not understand what Hyun was talking about, which made him very angry. One of the experienced hunters, who was closely watching the fight through powerful binoculars, reported, "Park Hyun Su is alive, and they are in hand-to-hand combat." Haksun laughed smugly, feeling his powerful energy restored. It instantly soared high into the sky, filled with new destructive energy. He aimed his attack and delivered a powerful blow directly at the defenseless Heng. The demon managed to pull his disciple's body out of the fatal blow at the last moment. Everything around instantly burst into bright flames, and when the smoke cleared, a deep pit formed at the impact site. The hunters watched this incredible battle in horror, not understanding how they could defeat such a terrible monster. Haksun stared at the deep hole in surprise, trying to understand what had just happened, because it seemed as if someone had pushed Han away. In any case, Haksun confidently understood that Heng had only enough strength left for one weak blow at most. Hyun lay helplessly on the ground, motionless, with a surveillance drone hovering insistently above him. From the safe distance of the association, Lee watched him closely, mentally begging him to get up. The demon also loomed over Heng's exhausted body, realizing that even though he was his disciple, he could no longer help him. The young demon spirit suddenly began to separate from another demon spirit. Hovering over Hyun, it began to delve deeply into his mind. In the office, an angry Lee shouted that they should have urgently intervened in the fight before Park Hyun Su died. She desperately ordered the Azure Dragon unit to immediately engage the powerful enemy. However, the hunters lingered, shocked to see the two of them in action. They couldn't bring themselves to move out of fear. Hyun was able to get to his feet, demonstrating his incredible will to fight. The demon understood that although it was ugly to interrupt someone's fierce battle, he simply could not let Hyun die. He could have easily helped him simply escape from this dangerous place. However, Hyun stubbornly wanted to continue fighting further, despite the terrible danger. He rose, using the level 3 skill, listening to instructions. He could repeat one of the demon's powerful techniques only one time per day. The radio suddenly announced the cancellation of the previous order, ordering everyone to remain at a safe distance for support. Hoxon looked at Han in surprise and asked what he was mumbling incomprehensibly under his breath. It was an ancient martial art that he could use without any internal energy, drawing strength from the world around him. Hang was ready to use his powerful celestial spirit body in a last desperate attempt. The demon was surprised, as he had never shown it to him before. Hyun gathered all his inner strength in his body, preparing for the decisive battle. Hoxon's body was completely covered in strong metal, signaling that it was time to end this fierce battle. Hang was also fully prepared for battle, shouting the battle cry, "Forward!" around Hang, radiating an unknown energy. These mysterious mirrors began to quickly absorb the powerful energy of both incredible fighters. After that, one of the mirrors suddenly shattered into small pieces with a loud crack. The fighters simultaneously raised their wounded heads upward, shocked to see that it was a mirror world. The hunters below could not understand how this mirror world could collapse so quickly after its first use. Suddenly, a line of fire of enormous power swept straight across the sky, illuminating everything around. Ha finally arrived on the battlefield Urok. Her appearance inspired hope. She took a quick look at the injured Hyun and praised him. "Great job! You were incredible for holding out so long." She confidently said that the Azure Dragon unit was already behind and ready for battle, and now she would take care of everything. Hoxon was ready to fight her, wondering if she had decided to fight him alone. Threatening voices of unknown allies rang out from the dark sky. Then, a bright portal suddenly appeared in the sky, and Hoxon's friends emerged from it looking serious. Meanwhile, a week later, an important committee met to discuss the opening of portals in various countries. The automatic translation device was activated, and all meeting participants were asked to wear headphones to discuss the decision. One of the committee members stood up and announced that the gate that the ancient dragon had spread would be under the control of a guild that had S-rank hunters in each country and would be responsible for the paradise. If the gate opens in countries without S-rank hunters, they will choose a guild to go there according to the situation. Hoxon asked impatiently if the man was just telling them about his decision. Then why was there a need to call them to this meeting? He stood up abruptly and slammed his fist on the table, exclaiming how it was even possible that humanity's survival depended on the mercy of S-rank hunters. He shouted that he and the powerful ES Guild would act according to their own vision of the situation. Ha called out to him sharply, asking why he always had to go against the tide, when they needed to work together to have any chance of survival. Hoxon protested, insisting that if he could stop it, then humanity would survive. Otherwise, it would inevitably perish. There was real panic in the city, and huge traffic jams formed on the streets due to the large number of cars. Frightened people ran away in panic, shouting that a portal had dangerously opened right in the school, which meant that terrible monsters might appear soon, and they needed to escape urgently. The hunters from the Azure Dragon unit were still cautiously watching the dangerous events unfolding before their eyes. There were already 4 strong S-rank hunters on the battlefield, and if they started a battle with each other, it would most likely lead to a national-level disaster. Jill cautiously approached to calm the angry Hoxon, and Yamamoto politely apologized for his hot-headedness, which had once again become foolish. He suddenly recognized Yamamoto Takeshi. He had seen his photo in a popular magazine. He was ranked 8th among all S-rank hunters in the world. Jill continued to yell angrily at Hoxon, berating him for what he had done and asking what he had forgotten in another country. Hein looked at Hoxon in surprise. He was shocked when he realized that he was fighting against the German Hoxon. Baldur is a hunter who ranked 2nd in the world ranking. Hoxon never appeared in the newspapers or on television, so most ordinary people didn't know what he looked like. They only knew about his cruelty. Yamamoto spoke calmly with Ha, explaining that the ES Guild had promised to offer its sincere apology on a national level and fully compensate for the damage caused. However, Hyun suddenly shouted angrily he couldn't just forgive it. He was unexpectedly attacked for reasons unknown to him and had to destroy the school he went to every day. But he was decisively stopped by someone's voice. Jill Lordeman politely introduced herself and greeted Han, expressing her admiration. Hyun was very surprised that Jill was fluent in Korean. But Jill explained that he could match the lengths of voice waves to speak different languages of the world. He assured them that they had not come here to fight, but only to take their foolish head. Takeshi also politely introduced himself to Hana and bowed respectfully to offer his deepest apologies for his leader's actions. Hyung angrily shouted, how could he just apologize after all the horror they had caused to his town and school? He felt a strong need to bring this matter to an end and punish the guilty. But Ha's restraining hand decisively stopped his angry impulse. Takeshi, the vice leader of the powerful ES Guild, assured that he could be trusted, and since there were no casualties, it was better to leave it at that. Takeshi continued to angrily shout at Hakusen, calling his actions an open act of invasion, emphasizing that even if they sent an army, they would not be able to do or say anything against them. He put a sympathetic hand on Hakusen's shoulder, insisting that they needed to return home immediately. Hakusen, reluctantly obeying, called out to Heng, promising that they could finish their fight next time, but for now he needed to become much stronger. And he took off, disappearing with incredible speed. Takeshi watched him carefully, realizing that they had just prevented another major crisis. He turned to Hyun and said that as an A-rank hunter, he should celebrate this hard-fought victory. Jill kindly said that he sincerely hoped they could get along in the future. He opened a magical portal, inviting them to pass through it. Han boy in a friendly way, which greatly angered the young hunter. Ha only quietly hoped that Hyun would not die from his wounds, because who would have thought that he would be able to compete with Hakusen himself on equal terms? How incredibly strong was he really? After a tough battle, Ha immediately sent the injured Hyun to the hospital's trauma unit. There, the attentive doctor said in surprise that his wounds were healing much faster than he expected, and everything should be completely gone by tomorrow. Ha wondered with interest if he had become much stronger after eating the snake's heart. But Hyun quickly dressed and was about to finally go home after all these terrible events. Hyung took the subway down to get to his house. The demon sat impatiently in the subway car and didn't understand why they needed it if he could easily use demon flight. But Hyun only said wearily that it had been a very hard day, and he just wanted to take the subway in peace. He was tormented by heavy thoughts. Fighting next to people was too dangerous. Today, innocent people had almost been harmed as a result of their fight, and he didn't know what others might think of him now. Everyone was probably very worried about the terrible destruction in the city. But to his great surprise, the school was completely intact, without any damage. And then suddenly, Lee's gentle voice sounded from behind, sincerely praising his efforts and courage. She smiled gently, showing how much she cared for him. She explained that the association has a special team of highly qualified specialists responsible for the rapid restoration of damaged buildings. She personally came here to help rebuild the affected area. Hyun hugged her back because she had no idea how worried he was on the way to this place. Lee was gently upset by his unexpected embrace. But then people from the surrounding balconies suddenly recognized Han. They joyfully began to shout his name and shout that he was a true hero who had saved their hometown. Meanwhile, a scene with a magnificent landscape and the entrance to a luxurious palace opened before us. Inside was a man leisurely smoking his favorite pipe, looking displeased. The king was annoyed that their carefully crafted Watergate plan had gone awry due to a misjudgment of the monster's strength. The servant, who respectfully knelt before him, begged him not to worry about this failure. She assured him that a fragment from the Western Sea of Korea should be quite enough to completely destroy their enemies. Regarding their parallel plan, the man reported that it was 72% complete. The king sat silently in his chair, demanding to see the progress of their complex plan immediately. The news reported that S-rank hunter Hakusen was behind the destruction of the Doan High School on the 12th, Baldur from Germany. He illegally entered their country and attempted to attack the local hunter Park Hyun Su, destroying a school during the fight. As a result of the incident, the ES Guild issued an official apology and promised to quickly compensate for all damages. Choi was very pleased with this, considering it an extremely cool turn of events. He shouted loudly with joy, amazed that an A-rank hunter had survived the White Wolf's attack. He wondered how Noonan would react if he broke the neck of someone like Heng, but he decided to just wait, because their meeting was supposed to take place soon. In his apartment, Hyun was taking a bath, and the impatient demon was urging him to start cooking faster. Hyun came out of the bath fresh and rested after the water procedures. He came out completely naked, which provoked an angry reaction from the demon, who began to scream how dare he walk like that in front of the teacher. For this, Hyun received a strong reprimand, because for him it was a normal thing to do when you live alone. Hyun hung up the phone, remembering that there was an expedition tomorrow, so he ordered something special for them for dinner. He ordered spicy pork with fragrant rice, hoping to please the demon. The demon at first didn't understand how this exquisite dish could be compared to ordinary ramen. Hyun gave the demon a small piece of spicy pork with rice to try. He shouted in amazement. How could he be fed only ramen all the time when there is such an incredible delicacy? The next morning, Hyun was fully prepared for the important task ahead. He arrived at the Red Lion's headquarters feeling excited about his first official expedition as a hunter. Who would have believed that he would become a full member of the prestigious Red Lions Guild? And then, unexpectedly, someone called his name. It was Sun himself. Mayan Jin, who sincerely expressed his joy at their meeting. Sun blushed slightly at the attention, and Hyun extended his hand to greet the legendary steel god of death. Hunter Sun Hyun Jin had been Hyun's idol for a long time, and he was his ardent fan. He kindly knew that this was the first official expedition for Hang, and assured that they would try to work together as a cohesive team. The demon didn't understand who this person was in front of them, and Hyun almost lost consciousness from intense excitement. This incredibly strong hunter was considered invincible, as he saved a huge number of human lives. Hang had long admired his heroic exploits and incredible strength. But then his attention was drawn to another famous hunter, Ho Jun Sung, who was standing nearby. Hyun, blushing a little again with excitement, politely approached to greet him as well. The demon wondered again who it was, and Hen quietly explained that although this hunter looked rather thin, he actually possessed incredible physical strength. For yet another respectful behavior, Hyun again received a light reprimand from his strict demon mentor. The demon didn't understand why Heng was acting like their servant, bowing his head so low in front of the other hunters. But for Heng, it was just a sincere expression of his deep respect and fanaticism. The demon continued his educational speech, reminding him that he was the successor of a powerful heavenly demon, and he should not bow his head to anyone. Even if he wasn't Muram, he was still the heir of the heavenly demon, who would lead the heavenly demon divine cult. He had to firmly remember this forever and behave according to his high status. In her cozy office, Ha gazed thoughtfully at the photograph on her desk. Hyun entered her spacious office, ready for the upcoming mission. She had something important to ask him, and she stood before him in her elegant battle gear. She asked directly if Hyun intended to continue working with her in their prestigious guild. Hyun didn't quite understand what exactly she meant by her question. She explained that he had incredibly survived a difficult battle against the most powerful Haksun. Even though he was originally evaluated and awarded an A rank, his true strength had long surpassed that level. No, maybe back then he was indeed an A-rank hunter based on his initial abilities. But now he was clearly an S-rank hunter based on his incredible strength and potential. Hyun opened his mouth wide in surprise, shocked by her words. Ha promised that she would help him in every way possible until he officially became a recognized S-rank hunter. But now there was no longer an urgent need for this, so their previous formal contract lost its legal validity. She asked directly what he planned to do next with his hunting career. He replied without hesitation that he was determined to remain in their friendly guild. He felt that he still hadn't done anything meaningful for the guild, even though he had received a considerable sum of money for his first contract. Ha was sincerely pleased with his dedicated decision, because this was to be Heng's first truly responsible expedition, and every effort had to be made to ensure its success. Ha told him to go down to the basement, where he would find his new personalized gear with his name on it, and ordered him to change clothes immediately. He nodded gratefully and quickly left her office, full of determination. As soon as he left the door of Ha's office, the demon gave him an angry and reproachful look. Yes, Hyun again automatically bowed to his mentor, immediately realizing his error in behavior. And for this, he again received a light but instructive reprimand from his demanding demon mentor. But she was not only his strict boss, but also, as he began to understand, a rather good and fair person. And together they resolutely set out on their first joint expedition. Meanwhile, Ha addressed all the loyal members of her powerful guild. Seize a precious piece of paradise without hesitation. They will need high-level magic items as well as healing potions for quick recovery in battle. But the most important thing for success is unwavering courage to protect your comrades, and that will be more than enough. Hyun was impressed by her determination, although he had always considered Ha an incredibly strong woman. But today, she showed herself to be a true heroine. Has strictly ordered everyone to look carefully at their comrades nearby and make sure they would be able to protect them in any situation. All members of the squad confidently confirmed their willingness to defend each other to the last. She resolutely raised her hand up and shouted loudly for everyone to move forward without hesitation, following the fragment of paradise. Meanwhile, in the luxurious palace, Knight, Nim's faithful servant, came to him and reported that the Red Lion Expeditionary Force had just arrived in the Western Sea. Knight impatiently asked what their total strength really was for the upcoming mission. The servant replied that in addition to the powerful S-rank Ha-Yurak, there were also about 30 experienced A-rank hunters there. Knight strictly ordered his subordinates not to relax their vigilance for even a short second. But even with all their gathered strength, today the Red Lion was bound to meet an inevitable end, and Korea, according to Knight, should also have disappeared from the face of the earth as a result of their intervention. The hunting party finally arrived at the indicated sea, where a portal to another dimension was supposed to open. It was through this mysterious portal that their ship had to pass to reach a fragment of paradise. Hyun found himself in such a strange place, which was called Paradise. According to previous reports, the expedition to Paradise consisted of 2 parts, and the first of them ended in failure. Everyone except the S-rank hunter died. However, although the second part of the expedition was more successful, more than 20 people died, and a significant part of the unit was seriously injured. Experienced hunters knew that people go to Paradise and die after learning with their own eyes why this place has such a terrible name. Simply coming face to face with one of the deadly shards of paradise makes a person begin to shake uncontrollably with terror. The demon felt that inevitable death awaited them in these mysterious gates. If even his wise teacher says something like that, then this gate is definitely no match for ordinary portals. Ha shouted loudly forward, urging everyone that the key to humanity's salvation lay just beyond these gates. All the hunters rushed into the dangerous portal at the same time, without hesitation, full of determination. And so they crossed the invisible border and found themselves in the very heart of paradise. Hyun unexpectedly landed in the middle of a vast and hot desert, feeling strangely cold. The demon felt that this place was too vast and realistic to be a mere illusion. When the demon was still young, he almost died, and he knew well the price that had to be paid for the illusion known as the Celestial Guardian, a complex technique of the mystical dimension. If it was an illusion after all, then they just needed to find something that would break it and destroy everything around it. Heng was horrified to discover that he was all alone in the middle of the desert. All his companions had already disappeared. Choi also wandered alone in the vast desert, feeling completely cut off from his people. He persistently wandered through the scorching desert in the hope of finding the other members of his team. Among the yellow sand of the desert, he suddenly found a huge diamond, at least 500 carats sparkling in the sun. He bent down carefully to pick up the jewel. But it turned out to be only part of a huge, terrifying creature that instantly opened its deadly jaws to attack Choi. Choi barely managed to dodge the unexpected blow, realizing that the diamond could not just be lying in the middle of the desert. He quickly prepared to deliver a powerful rock-breaker blow. He struck with all his strength at the horrible creature, which screamed loudly in pain. But this scorpion-like snake had already aimed its poisonous tail at him, preparing for a deadly blow. Choi quickly displayed his sturdy Spartan shield, realizing that on such a dangerous expedition, it was necessary to take many different protective items. Next, he tried to use his bone copy to attack. But on this dangerous expedition, there were no supports who could provide him with the necessary weapons in time. Therefore, he was once again forced to use his powerful rock destroyer for defense. They came together in a fierce battle not for life, but for death. The huge monster greedily opened its mouth and tried to grab Choi with its sharp teeth. The monster was incredibly large, so Choi quickly set up a double protective shield. However, the blow from the monstrous creature was extremely strong and threw Choi back. He flew a considerable distance and rolled painfully across the hard desert ground. The monster screamed loudly, feeling its superiority. Was this really the end for the impudent Choi? But suddenly, a powerful blow of seed, inflicted by an unknown force, unexpectedly flew into the huge monster. It was Heng who finally delivered his crushing blow to the terrible monster in the desert. Meanwhile, the powerful Ha has just emerged from a dangerous portal in a completely different place. Who would have thought that they would be so unexpectedly scattered throughout the vast territory of paradise immediately after entering? All she saw around her was the boundless and deep sea stretching to the horizon. But she couldn't just keep flying aimlessly over the water. She urgently needed to check if there was anything dangerous underwater. She instantly used her powerful demonic night attack, and a multitude of bright golden spheres of energy formed above her. All of these glowing spheres swiftly headed deep underwater, ready to attack. A huge destructive explosion suddenly roared over the sea, sending huge columns of water into the air. A deep chasm formed in the sea abyss, and water began to flow into it at a furious speed. She quickly turned around and was horrified to see hundreds of terrifying eyes of unknown creatures staring at her from the watery darkness. Meanwhile, other brave hunters fought a fierce battle with the numerous terrible monsters that inhabited this strange world. Many of them have already died heroically in an unequal battle, defending their comrades until their last breath. Sun desperately shouted to everyone, urging them not to give up, because if they lost the will to fight, their comrades would die in vain. But Ho Jun Sung shouted back that no one even thought about giving up in this difficult situation. He was determined to return alive from this hell and certainly receive a well-deserved award for his courage. One of the brave fighters used his powerful lightning of destruction, and a multitude of terrifying monsters were instantly enveloped in a bright electric glow. But suddenly, one of the fiercest monsters unexpectedly pounced on him from behind and dug its sharp teeth straight into his neck. The hunter was thrown aside by the terrible blow, and he fell painfully to the ground. But then in Ho Jun, Sunga suddenly felt the sharp claw of an unknown predatory creature. Two wild animals then clawed at his chest. Sun instantly rushed to help his wounded comrade without thinking about his own safety. But from above, another, even bigger and more terrifying monster was already aiming at him, ready to attack. Sun quickly covered himself with his strong steel shield, for he was the steel god of death and could not lose to such weak creatures. However, while he bravely held his shield against one attacker, two other horrible creatures suddenly struck him from the front and back, right in the chest. Ho, despite his bleeding wound, desperately ran to his comrade's rescue, demonstrating incredible courage. However, the number of terrifying monsters around them continued to grow steadily, surrounding them on all sides. A dark-haired man in elaborate clothing and his silent servant calmly watched the fierce battle from afar. Knight laughed smugly, thinking it would all be over before he could finish his fragrant cup of tea. His faithful servant grimly remarked that even the gulag had not yet appeared on the battlefield, and he was incredibly bored watching this spectacle. If the gulag comes out, the man said thoughtfully, it will become even more boring because it will end everything quickly. The man curiously asked his servant if the same Park Hyun Su they were interested in had already appeared on the battlefield. The servant respectfully replied that he did, and she specially selected the Sorcerer King, one of the strongest monsters in the area, for him. According to her report, these two have finally met on the battlefield. Choi was incredibly happy that they finally met Hyun in this strange place. He almost cried with relief when he thought that he had been one of those who had been unexpectedly separated from the main group. Choi enthusiastically began praising Hyun as he knew of his incredible feats, including his victory over the great Imugi and his courageous battle with the White Wolf. Hyun was a bit surprised that Choi was talking so much and praising him so enthusiastically. The demon angrily told Hyun to hit him to finally shut up. But Choi continued to praise his incredible fighting skills, saying he had seen videos of his fights and was a big fan. The demon again angrily ordered Hung to hit this talkative man. Choi suddenly noticed that during his enthusiastic conversation, Hyun looked up at the sky several times in a strange way, and he became curious about what was wrong with him. Choi thought about it, because he knew that Hyun's unique ability was listening to instructions. But he initially thought that he had simply written the first thing that came to mind. Now Choi wondered what instructions this strange boy was actually listening to. Hyun's fighting style seemed to Choi like some kind of unreal martial art from another world. Choi's gaze directed at Hyun. He quietly ordered Hyun to be more careful with such interested eyes watching him closely. Choi continued his thoughts. Hyun was clearly listening to some tips about martial arts, but from whom exactly? Suddenly, their eyes met, and at that very moment, another mysterious portal unexpectedly opened right in front of them. A gate inside another gate? What could that mean? In front of the gates of paradise, the fleet of the influential Hunters Association unexpectedly joined, demonstrating its strength. At the head of the fleet stood Lee herself resolutely, ready for any development of events. At that time, the portal already contained elite units from the Red Lion Guild and the Aegis Guild. The association made a strategic decision to join them only when their presence became absolutely necessary. A man who was closely monitoring the situation with the portal reported that Anderson's intensity is currently 24 units, and when it reaches the critical mark of 100, a dangerous gate collision will occur. Choi and Hyun stood by the mysterious gate that had just opened, and Choi was impatiently suggesting that they go inside immediately. Hyun felt some doubts about the advisability of such a hasty decision and hesitated whether it was worth the risk. Choi, noticing his hesitation, without further ado, resolutely entered the unknown portal first. Heng wanted to follow his friend, but the stern demon suddenly stopped him. The demon believed that now they had a great chance to better explore this strange and potentially dangerous place. However, Hyun could not do that to his friend because they had come here as one cohesive team. Ignoring the warnings of his domineering teacher, Hyun resolutely began to enter the mysterious portal. His body finally appeared fully on the other side of the portal. The portal turned out to be located on the top of a high mountain, and Hang flew rapidly down. In an instant, he quickly used his powerful Sky Demon flight technique to stay in the air. He slowly climbed to the top of the ancient building, surveying the unfamiliar place. The portal was located on the highest tower of the old castle. But where did Choi go? Choi also carefully climbed up the castle wall, trying to reach the top. Hyun held out his hand and helped him climb up to the portal. Together, they glanced at the incredible landscape that opened before their eyes, realizing that this was where they needed to go. Before them lay an entire civilization within the gates, one they had never encountered before. Choi, without hesitation, walked in a left direction, telling Hyung that he could go right and try to enter the castle. Since there was absolutely no communication in this strange place, Choi handed Hyun a small red glow. It was a special red firework that Hen was supposed to light in case of unforeseen danger. This was where their paths temporarily parted. This was to be expected from such a seasoned veteran as Choi. A large, slightly damaged clock stood majestically in the middle of an unfamiliar city. And inside his old mechanism was the monstrous skeleton of some ancient king. Had the gates of light opened again in this strange place? Meanwhile, on another battlefield, the situation was far from the best. Many brave soldiers fell in battle. The dark-haired man's servants calmly looked down at the battlefield, noting that it seemed that all of the Red Lion's A-rank hunters had been destroyed. Then, carefully examining the battlefield through powerful binoculars, the servant informed his master that Park Hyun Su was cautiously approaching the ancient castle of Entropia, trying to avoid danger. And the mighty Hayu Rock fought a difficult battle alone in the stormy sea of Obel, demonstrating her incredible strength. Her body burned with bright flames, and she was ready to burn all enemies with her hellish fire Mephisto. The horrible monsters, engulfed in flames, fell helplessly back into the dark water. There were countless of them, and Ha knew she couldn't waste so much precious time on this battle, but she couldn't just leave either. And the portal through which they arrived had already begun to close, cutting off their path of retreat. Suddenly, a new huge batch of terrible monsters, ready for battle, swooped down on her from the sky. Ha instantly launched her fiery hand, unleashing an even larger and more powerful stream of hellfire. But the monsters suddenly clasped their long tails together, forming a strong protective shield. Then they strangely merged into one huge and extremely strong monster. Ha understood with anxiety that things were going very badly, and the situation was becoming critical. The huge monster slowly aimed its blazing eyes at her, preparing for a devastating attack. Meanwhile, Choi cautiously walked along the high wall of the ancient castle, and it seemed to him that this wall would never end. Then he decided to simply go down to explore the inside of the castle. And soon he found himself right in an unfamiliar city, surrounded by strange architecture. He launched a small ball of energy and asked it to show him where valuable and rare items might be located in this place. The magic ball led him through the narrow streets of the mysterious city, lighting the way. He was very curious to see what incredible treasures he could find in this abandoned place. Hong also walked carefully along the high walls of the castle, but did not feel the presence of a single living person around. However, his sensitive demon suddenly sensed something foreign and extremely large, rapidly approaching them. A moment later, a huge shadow flashed through the air, and something heavy landed on the wall with a deafening explosion. When the thick smoke finally cleared, the stunned Hang and the demon were confronted by the huge skeleton of some powerful king, dressed in ancient armor. The king asked in his eerie voice if they were by chance trying to get to the mysterious gate of light that was somewhere nearby. They were suddenly transported to the spacious room of an ancient clock, surrounded by strange mechanisms. The majestic skeleton king sat on his throne and thanked them for accepting his unexpected invitation and expressed a desire to ask something. He asked them if they had come to his kingdom through a mysterious portal of light that had recently opened. Hyun replied confusedly that if it was about portals, then it probably was. The demon thought for a moment. It seemed he could see the true nature of this strange king. The skeleton king confirmed his guess, saying in a calm voice, "Of course I can see him." Then the king asked Han if he was a sorcerer who had power over the souls of the dead, but this turned out not to be the case. The king snapped his bony fingers, and two small tables and fragrant hot tea in elegant cups suddenly appeared before his honored guests. The demon, not hiding his curiosity, directly asked if he was the true king of this place. The skeleton shook his head and clutched his skull, admitting that he had very vague memories of his past life. He mentioned that he had already lived for about 283 years, but, as he suggested, 1 year for him could be equal to 10 ordinary years, so he could have lived for over 2,000 years. The king was surprised and asked why they were not drinking the offered tea, because according to him, this special drink could significantly increase their reserves of magical mana. He treated them to tea because there had been no guests in his gloomy kingdom for a very long time. Hang took a cautious sip of his tea, trying to understand what this mysterious mana the king had spoken of was. The demon, sensing danger, quietly suggested that the tea might be poisoned, and Hang instantly spat it out. Han asked the king what had happened here, and why the inside of the ancient castle was so dirty and neglected. And then he suddenly realized that the true king of this gloomy place was sitting before him, and quickly apologized for his tactlessness. The king just sighed and said he was glad to have someone to talk to after so many years of loneliness. Most likely he really was once the king of this city. At least he looked like a real ruler. This wealthy country, from the very beginning of its existence, was the envy of all surrounding states for its prosperity. Here, happiness was guaranteed to anyone who worked hard and honestly for the good of their community. But one terrible day, portals of light suddenly began to appear, and various terrible monsters began to emerge from there. The country was instantly gripped by a terrible panic, destroying the former peace. The king admitted that he didn't remember if he was still alive as king then, but the demon shouted impatiently, "Just say you were king, it's obvious!" But what the king was absolutely sure of was that in those distant times he possessed powerful magic. Therefore, he did not hesitate to use all his incredible power to destroy the invasions of terrible monsters. Meanwhile, on the battlefield, where the hunters fought bravely, the terrible gulag suddenly appeared. He quickly picked up the body of one of the fallen hunters and mercilessly ate it. The frightened servant of the dark-haired man informed Knight that the terrible gulag had finally awakened. She anxiously asked what they were going to do in this critical situation, and Knight calmly replied, "What else but to gather them all in one place for a decisive battle." Ha! Desperately trying to escape from a huge sea monster. Suddenly, she saw a new gate open right in front of her. Through them, one could see the terrible gulag. The sky above the gulag began to crack menacingly. Suddenly, a huge amount of water gushed out from there. The Skeleton King continued his sad tale, admitting that despite all his efforts, he was never able to destroy all the terrible monsters. Hyun asked curiously what happened to his kingdom afterwards. The king sighed and said that he had woken up in such a terrible state, without a body, just a skeleton. He clutched his skull in fear, for he did not know what had become of his once prosperous people. The demon sympathetically didn't know what to say in response to this horrific story. However, suddenly the Skeleton King changed his tone dramatically. It seemed to him that they had come here to finally kill him, and he began to desperately beg them to immediately end his miserable existence. Heng was completely confused, because isn't this ancient king dead now? Water filled the entire surrounding space with incredible speed, flooding everything around. Ha, demonstrating her incredible strength, broke free from this powerful water flow. Two mysterious portals suddenly overlapped each other, creating a strange anomaly. Ha, who had died in battle, floated helplessly in the water, and suddenly, out of the dark water, a terrifying gulag flew swiftly, ready for a new battle. The frightened servants of the dark-haired knight shouted with joy because they had finally met Ha. She eagerly asked who Knight Nim would bet on in this decisive battle. Without even looking towards the battlefield, Knight calmly replied that, of course, he was betting on the mighty gulag. Ha screamed in rage, burning with the desire to avenge the deaths of her loyal hunters. Her body was engulfed in bright flames, and she entered Firebird mode, demonstrating her incredible power. She bravely fought against two terrifying monsters at the same time, delivering devastating blows that caused powerful explosions. The terrifying gulag suddenly shot the burning Ha with its deadly energy beam. At the same time, another dark and no less vile monster was fiercely attacking Hal. The battle was extremely fierce, everything around was burning with bright flames, and the air trembled with explosions. Ha, full of determination, finally set her sights on the terrifying gulag, realizing that it was his turn to die. Meanwhile, in the ancient castle, Heng was surprised to ask the Skeleton King if he really wanted them to kill him. The demon, not hiding his irritation, asked Han if he couldn't do it himself. The Skeleton King, watching them closely, suddenly realized that he was faced with a student and his unusual teacher, who would have thought that Hung had chosen a spirit as his teacher. The king slowly raised his old bone staff, pointing it directly at his own skull, causing them to be completely incomprehensible. Had he just crushed his own skull? It seemed unbelievable. His crown fell helplessly onto the cold stone floor, but within a moment, the shattered skull of the Skeleton King miraculously fully recovered. He admitted that he had tried to kill himself countless times, but each time he had inexplicably resurrected. He couldn't even remember what terrible curse had been placed on him so many centuries ago. The king begged them to free him from the unbearable pain of eternal existence in complete solitude. The demon, sensing his desperation, briefly said that they could kill him. But he immediately added that he had one important condition. Meanwhile, a magical ball of energy stubbornly led Choi on his exciting treasure hunt in an unfamiliar city. And eventually it led him to a strange, clearly ancient door, behind which he felt something valuable awaited him. In that case, Choi decided to simply break down that old door with brute force and enter inside. And he struck the wooden surface with a swing, hoping to break it. The door broke open. A wide passage suddenly opened before him, leading into a large and spacious hall. Inside, the hall looked like part of an ancient, long-abandoned structure. He cautiously walked inside, but suddenly the massive lion statues standing along the walls shone brightly with a strange light. Choi looked around in surprise. He didn't understand what was happening in this strange place. But then the stone statues suddenly came to life and deftly jumped to the ground, demonstrating their danger. The demon calmly told the king that his condition was to find out exactly how they could get out of this strange place. But Hyun was surprised and didn't understand, because they simply had to go through the same portal they entered. For his inattention, Hyun received a light but instructive slap from the demon. The demon patiently explained that the portal through which they had come here was long gone. The demon wisely advised Han to always keep in mind possible ways out of any place he finds himself. The Skeleton King calmly replied that he himself did not know how to get out of this cursed place, and if he did, he would have left it long ago. But he knew something that could help them in this difficult situation. The Skeleton King slowly began to climb up, leading them along with him. The demon, sensing danger, quietly told Hung that the king might be up to something, and they needed to be very careful. But Heng didn't think the old king was going to do them any harm. They finally came to a huge, elaborately decorated door. The Skeleton King commanded the doors to open in an authoritative voice. The door slowly opened, and Hyun held his breath at what he saw. The huge dial of an ancient clock opened before them, and a strange, inexplicable energy was felt in the air. Nothing like it they had ever felt before. They carefully descended, and the king explained that he could have opened this door countless times in his long existence. They found themselves near a large sphere made of dark marble. It was entropy, the very essence of destruction. The king solemnly told Henu to try to get his hands on this mysterious sphere. The king explained that he did not know what exactly this sphere would show Hyun. It could be an ordinary day in his life, or even the moment of the birth of the entire universe. Whatever it is, it will be what Hyun truly desires in his heart. The demon, sensing danger, said there was no point in doubting now that they had come this far. Hyun carefully placed both hands on the cold surface of the mysterious sphere. The energy around him suddenly swirled, changing color, becoming more and more intense. The sphere suddenly began to pull Heng into its dark abyss. It seems the old Skeleton King tricked them into this trap. The Skeleton King quietly apologized for his lies and deception. Hyun screamed desperately, realizing he couldn't tear his hands away from the sphere. The demon angrily asked the king why he did it, and he only calmly replied that he just wanted to get out of this cursed place just like they did. After a long and fruitless search, he finally found a way to reopen the gates of light. But he was woefully lacking the energy necessary for this, and when they unexpectedly appeared in his possessions, the king had a strong, intuitive feeling that the necessary time had finally come. The king explained that once upon a time, he had absorbed the souls of all his subjects in order to gain enough strength to defeat the terrible monsters. But because of this, he was left completely alone, and he no longer had the energy he could muster on his own. And then they appeared, carrying the energy of thousands of living people. This powerful energy simply had to belong to him in order to carry out his plan. The demon seemed to understand everything he needed to know. He calmly told Hyun to calm down, asking if he really thought that the martial arts that the demon had taught him so diligently would not help him in this difficult situation. He resolutely ordered Hyun to use his powerful dominating heavenly demon move. Exactly, Hyun panicked too much because he couldn't take his hands off the sphere. Absolutely everything in existence bowed before the powerful celestial demon. Heng abruptly lifted his foot and used the dominating step of the celestial demon with all his strength, and a devastating explosion of incredible power resounded in the ancient building. The Skeleton King did not understand what exactly was happening in the ruined hall. The dark ball of energy he had just released fell helplessly onto the cracked stone floor and slowly rolled straight towards him. Heng calmly placed his foot on this dark orb, while the Skeleton King sat helplessly on his knees, shocked by his actions. The king suddenly shouted, asking how this mortal dared to bring the king himself to his knees. The demon flared up with energy, saying that this was how every mortal should behave before the powerful celestial demon. Hyun instantly leapt into the air, preparing to deliver a devastating blow straight to the Skeleton King's head. He struck with all his strength with the powerful tree technique, piercing the fragile skull of the ancient skeleton. And in another hall of the ancient castle, the brave Choi bravely fought with the revived marble beasts that attacked him from all sides. Choi skillfully defended himself with his strong Spartan shield against a pack of large and fierce marble wolves. He quickly delivered a powerful blow to one of the attackers, hoping to destroy him. Another marble beast instantly tried to attack him from the side, but Choi repelled its attack in time. The number of these monstrous marble beasts seemed endless, surrounding him on all sides. Realizing that the situation was becoming critical, Choi decided it was time for a quick escape from this dangerous place. He accidentally stepped on one of the stone slabs of the floor, and a void suddenly formed beneath him. Choi suddenly fell into a deep hole. But the bottom of the pit insidiously opened again, and sharp metal spears appeared from below, aimed directly at him. Choi desperately grabbed the edge of the wall and barely held on, hanging over a deadly trap. With great effort, he climbed out of the dangerous pit, almost saying goodbye to life. He raised his head and saw before him a large, shining stone of incredible beauty. Well, finally, thought Choi, I have found a real treasure in this strange place. He struck with all his strength at this large emerald, hoping to shatter it. And at that very moment, the Skeleton King's crown suddenly fell from his head and rolled across the cold floor. Motionless, headless body fell helplessly onto the stone floor. But the powerful demon sensed that this was far from the end of their struggle. The Skeleton King's body suddenly glowed brightly with a green light, and his severed head miraculously grew back into place. The king raised his crown and boldly admitted that Heng was not bad for a mere mortal. But he added that Hyun was just a speck of dust compared to his power. The king raised his old bone staff again, demonstrating his power, and reluctantly admitted that Teacher Heng was capable of something. The demon instantly ordered Hyun to watch his back carefully, sensing danger. From the darkness behind Heng, long tongues of black energy appeared, trying to grab his body. The demon quickly told Hyun not to panic and to immediately use the powerful materialization of the celestial demon for protection. Thanks to his skill, Hyun managed to dodge the insidious attack in time. But the Skeleton King was not going to back down and continued to fiercely threaten Henna with his magic. Hyun desperately tried to escape his attacks using his swift sky demon flight. Heng quickly rose upwards despite the Skeleton King's continuous attacks. The king wanted to say with irritation that such cheap tricks would not work on him, but the powerful demon interrupted him, haughtily asking how he could possibly think he could compete with him at such a level. The demon towered majestically over the Skeleton King, saying, "An insect can never reach heaven, for I am heaven itself." The king screamed furiously in anger, but the demon could afford to be arrogant in his heavenly status. The Skeleton King became even more angry, raised his magic wand again, and began to quickly gather a large ball of dark energy. He was ready to deliver a crushing blow to Hong, hoping to destroy him. Although the floor in the hall was completely destroyed, they still had strong stone pillars. Heng cleverly jumped off one of the pillars to gain a better position to attack the king, and instantly delivered a powerful blow with his unique technique, Seed Strike. Meanwhile, in the next hall, the brave Choi finally broke a large, shining diamond. And before his astonished eyes, another, no less mysterious artifact of incredible power opened. He quickly grabbed it with both hands, feeling his body greedily absorb its energy. The Skeleton King was terrified and did not understand what was happening to him. The artifact in Choi's hands suddenly shone brightly, and he felt that he could no longer hold it. The king cried out in despair, asking who dared to touch the sacred vessel of his immortal life. At the same time, Hyun was already flying rapidly towards the Skeleton King, preparing to deliver a devastating blow with his secret technique. Erasing the Heavenly Demon Fists, Part 2, 6 Techniques. His powerful celestial spirit body shone with incredible power. Both fighters held their breath for a moment, preparing for the decisive clash. Choi screamed from the incredible energy burning in his hands, barely containing its destructive power. The clothes on his body began to crack and tear under the pressure of this uncontrollable energy. At the same time, Hyun delivered his devastating heavenly spirit blow, taking off the Skeleton King's head. The Skeleton King, stunned, could not believe that someone would dare to take away a part of his immortal life. For if it were not for this, he would certainly have defeated them. A deafening explosion of incredible power erupted, destroying everything around. From the dead body of the Skeleton King, the tortured souls of his former subjects, who had suffered in captivity for centuries, suddenly burst forth. Choi fell helplessly to his knees, feeling the energy he had absorbed flow powerfully through every cell of his body. With incredible strength, he jumped out of a deep pit in which he had just been in mortal danger. Numerous terrifying monsters were still waiting for him, ready for battle. But now everything was different. His body began to become covered with a strong metal shell, and the uncontrollable power was driving him crazy. He quickly gathered all his newfound strength into his right hand, and instantly released it into a huge swarm of terrifying monsters surrounding him. A bright beam of pure energy flew swiftly straight into the pack of fierce wolves. He destroyed them all with one devastating blow, punching a huge hole in the stone wall. Choi felt his body much better, stronger, and more resilient than ever before. Ghostly spirits flew helplessly around Heng, and even when he first touched the mysterious sphere, he felt something strange pass through his body. Countless ghostly cries of people begged for salvation, asking to free their tortured souls. Hyun resolutely approached the shining sphere, telling the demon to stay here and wait patiently for his return. What if he can't return? The demon asked his disciple anxiously, but Heng understood that he had to do it. Hyun carefully placed his hands on the cold surface of the mysterious sphere, and at that very moment, the warm hand of a powerful demon fell on his shoulder. It was clear in his eyes that he was going with him, leaving Hyun no chance to object. Should he really sit there alone and be bored, waiting for his disciple to return? The demon asked angrily. That's right, because they were one in soul and body, thought Hen, feeling the support of his teacher. And they both placed their hands firmly on the shining sphere, ready for the unknown. The sphere's incredible energy instantly began to pull them into its abyss. Suddenly, an ancient city, familiar to them, opened before their eyes, but still alive, thriving, and not destroyed by terrible monsters. There were many happy people there, and according to their stories, this place truly resembled the city before its tragic destruction. These were the memories of an ancient king stuck in time. And suddenly, in the middle of the clear sky, a huge gate suddenly appeared, glowing with bright light. It was the same gate of light that the king had mentioned, and the people below began to flee in panic, trying to inform their ruler as quickly as possible. Various monsters began to emerge from the terrifying portal, wreaking chaos and destruction. Monsters mercilessly attacked defenseless people, sparing neither children nor women, spreading fear and death. The brave warriors of the kingdom courageously stood up for the defense of their fellow citizens, not fearing death. But the wise king, quickly assessing the critical situation, ordered all his soldiers to immediately retreat to the castle. The king himself courageously remained where he was, ready for a last desperate battle. With incredible power, he struck a mighty blow from the heavens, unleashing his wrath upon the terrifying monsters. Many monsters suffered serious damage from his devastating attack. The monsters were defeated, but for good? After the battle, the king sat alone in his luxurious tent, slowly sipping expensive wine. He understood that if this continued, the terrible monsters would inevitably destroy him, because his own strength was almost exhausted. The king could not understand what good this world was if its ruler perished ingloriously. Apart from him, no one else will be able to stop the endless stream of monsters emerging from the cursed gates of light. Didn't this mean that he himself was the embodiment of his country, its last hope? There was only one desperate option left, one that he had not dared to take for a long time. Necromancy is a forbidden magic that allows the king to gather the souls of his people and absorb their life force in vast quantities. But the king began to be tormented by terrible doubts. How could a country be called a country if there were not a single living person left in it? But if the king could survive, he promised himself to create a new, even better country for his people. His mind split into two conflicting parts. One insisted on using necromancy because people are always drawn to those who possess great power. The other half of his mind screamed that then he would become a terrible murderer of his own people, and how could he possibly commit such a terrible evil? In despair, the king hit himself hard on the head, trying to drown out the internal struggle. Lying in the spilled wine that had flowed from the jug he had broken, he suddenly heard a voice. One of his frightened subordinates reported, stammering with fear, that a gate of light had reappeared near the castle's eastern wall, and from there emerged an extremely large and terrifying monster, resembling an ancient dragon. The king finally lost his temper. He furiously shouted at his subordinate that the only thing these miserable people knew how to do was scream and complain endlessly about their worthless lives. He accused them of being no different from parasites who had attached themselves to him to continue their meaningless existence. But even their miserable lives he was willing to give at least some value, and in a fit of rage he killed his subordinate, piercing him with a sharp spear. But his blood would not be shed in vain, thought the king, overcome by madness. He quickly began to draw an elaborate magic circle on the dirty ground, using the blood of the slain man. The king began to desperately summon all the souls of his dead people, dreaming of gaining unprecedented power. In the name of the long-forgotten powerful god Gamora, he imperiously ordered the gathering of all the souls of his kingdom. He summoned souls to himself again and again, feeling his power grow. Mysterious summoning circles suddenly flared up throughout the ruined kingdom. The ghostly souls of people began to slowly emerge from their living bodies, leaving behind dead shells. They flew silently towards the tall tower with the ancient clock, where their king waited. All the souls of his people flew unquestioningly to their ruler. The king felt himself growing incredibly stronger with each soul he absorbed. And now finally, he has swallowed all the souls of his once great people. A new, terrifying figure of a king appeared before the huge dragon that threatened his kingdom. He would never again lose to any horrible monster that emerged from the cursed gates of light, he promised himself. The kingdom of Ryord was supposed to be eternal, the king thought, contemplating the defeated monster. However, suddenly the terrible dragon, in a last desperate attempt, tried to grab the king with its sharp claws. But the king only waved his magic spear contemptuously and threw a powerful ball of pure light at the dragon. A devastating explosion rang out, instantly engulfing the body of the monstrous dragon. And he really didn't lose. The huge dragon fell helplessly to the ground, defeated by his new strength. Hyun felt himself being torn apart from the inside by the vast number of souls and their silent screams. He heard all their centuries of pain and suffering. Heng was confused and did not know what to do with this terrible burden. The demon, sensing his torment, quietly suggested that Hyun should endure this ordeal, because if he was here, he would be able to do it. Hyun was almost losing consciousness from the unbearable pain. It seemed that the souls also felt his suffering, sympathizing with him. Then, Hyun suddenly saw a strange clump of bright energy emitting an unusual light. He cautiously wanted to get closer and looked around to ask his wise teacher what it could be. But the demon was nowhere to be found. He had disappeared in an unknown direction. And suddenly a voice from the shining bundle of energy said softly, "Come closer. Don't be afraid." Without hesitation, Hen carefully walked through this strange clump of light. A familiar figure sat before him, gently thanking him for the work he had done. This was the same ancient king of this once great city. Ghost's transparent hand gently placed its palm on the exhausted head of Heng, expressing silent sympathy for all the pain he had to endure because of the souls he had absorbed. And the ancient king performed a strange ceremony freeing Heng from this terrible burden. Hyun was instantly transported and found himself right in the middle of a large square in the now familiar city. There sat the king of this strange place calmly, but now he had an ordinary human form, with no signs of a skeleton. Heng recognized him immediately, but anger flared up in his soul. Was this king really trying to deceive everyone again? But the king gently reassured him, asking how he could have thought of such a terrible accusation. He admitted that he had spent 3,024 years in this dimension, waiting for his time. It wasn't just the skeleton waiting for a strong man to come from the outside world, capable of changing his fate. But the skeleton was talking about 2,000 years, thought Hen in surprise. Couldn't the skeleton and the person in front of him be the same thing? The king calmly replied that both yes and no, because when he used forbidden necromancy, he abandoned his evil essence and completely plunged into the abyss of entropy. Or in other words, his evil part was thrown out of his own body, leaving only the good. Then he gathered all his will into a fist and created this artificial world in another dimension. He was able to save several innocent souls who were nearly swallowed up by the all-consuming entropy, and helped them live in this new world. Although every day was the same for its inhabitants, they no longer knew pain and suffering. But Heng looked at him with clear condemnation in his eyes. The king seemed to have read in Heng's mind his unique ability to listen for clues. But how could he know about this? Thought Hen in surprise. The king gently asked Han not to feel offended, as they both had very little time left. Heng turned around looking for his wise teacher. What should he do with this king? Could he hit him? But the demon was nowhere to be found, and the king calmly explained that he had summoned him here for an important conversation. The king said that following instructions was exactly what Hyun needed right now, and asked him to stop speaking in riddles that only he understood. The king's evil self, his dark essence, kept the source of his immortal life separate from his physical body in order to live a nearly eternal life. But Heng and his powerful demon partner took this precious vessel of life, depriving the evil king of his power. Now Choi was desperately searching for Hyun, because he had become the second terrible reincarnation of evil, dangerous to all living things. Choi was no longer the good friend that Hyun knew. Now he was obsessed with only one desire: to kill him. Hyun cursed angrily, asking why all this was happening right now, at the most critical moment. Now he finally understood what was happening, and insisted that the king speak faster as time was running out. The king suddenly asked Heng to become his teacher, surprising him with this unexpected request, and asked how he knew so much about him. Before the surprised Hyun, informing him of a new unique ability, following other people's instructions. A new item appeared at the bottom of the message. Designated person, Sorcerer King. Meanwhile, in front of the dangerous portal, the Association fleet was still waiting. The man monitoring the situation reported with alarm that Anderson's intensity had risen sharply to a critical level of 63 units. Lee stood impassive at the head of her fleet, realizing that all she could do now was simply stand by and wait for the inevitable. But she was ready to give her life without hesitation if there was a threat of the portal's destructive impact on their world. She looked hopefully into the dark abyss of the portal, whispering softly, "Hold on, Hyun Su." Meanwhile, inside the dangerous portal, the mighty Ha still continued to fight desperately. She mercilessly burned countless horrible creatures with her hellish fire, who stubbornly refused to surrender. She was ready to end the terrible gulag with everything she had left, sparing no effort of her own. She flew at him, burning him with her deadly flames. Both fell into the dark water, continuing their deadly battle. Then Ha finally emerged from the water, breathing heavily. And immediately after her, the terrible gulag appeared, despite the injuries she received. She put all her strength into one crushing blow, but this tenacious creature was still alive. In another dimension, the ancient king continued his story. He had spent all his magical power to create this artificial world, and now Haenu needed to learn how to control mana to free the innocent souls of these people. Hung sat there, trying to understand what this mysterious mana was, and whether it was anything like the ki energy he was familiar with. The king patiently explained that Kai is the purified energy of nature, while mana is the raw, unprocessed energy of nature in its original form. And now Hyun had to learn to absorb this energy in its original form. Hyun concentrated and began to slowly absorb the surrounding energy. The system message unexpectedly announced, Hyun understood what mana is. Additional experience points received. The king was shocked by the speed of learning. Even he, one of the most talented magicians in the world, took about 3 hours to experience mana for the first time. Heng felt the mana seeping into his body. What next? He asked the king. Next was more difficult. He needed to take full control of all the souls inside his body. He had to feel the pain of each of them, and his task was simply to return all their pain to them. Hyun concentrated deeply, trying to complete the difficult task. In his hands shone brightly a sphere of pure energy, symbolizing the liberation of souls. Choi loomed over him from behind, his face distorted with hatred. Choi seemed to have no idea what was happening to Hyun, and whether he had accidentally fallen asleep at such a crucial moment. Choi raised his hands, preparing to deliver a devastating blow. Too bad, Choi wanted to see what he was really capable of. Hung's heart was beating wildly in his chest. It seemed like it was about to burst from the energy overflowing him. Was this all thanks to mana? The ancient king quietly told him to put mana into every word he spoke and simply say, disappear. Hyun, in some kind of semi-trance state, uttered this simple word, disappear. And at that moment, a bright light illuminated the hundreds of ghostly souls. Their plaintive cries ceased, and suddenly the glass shattered. The vengeful spirits disappeared forever, and the powerful demon was shocked. Could his disciple really be capable of such an incredible achievement? Perhaps Park Hyung-soo is actually an unprecedented genius whose abilities know no bounds. In this strange trance, the demon unexpectedly met the king's gaze. The king quietly said that his disciple had accomplished a great feat. He and his exhausted people, finally destroyed by eternal suffering, had gained their long-awaited freedom. They disappeared forever, dissolving in the light. The body of the ancient king began to slowly dissolve into thin air, and he asked to tell Hyung that they were all free now. Meanwhile, the possessed Choi had already set his sights on the defenseless Hyun, his eyes burning with hatred. Hyun opened his eyes sharply, sensing danger. A loud explosion erupted from the top of the collapsed tower, sending up clouds of dust and debris. Choi's ominous figure loomed directly over Hyun, who had finally come out of his trance. Choi smiled wickedly, already preparing to say goodbye to Hyun forever. He instantly pounced on Heng and delivered a devastating blow to his stomach. Choi himself suddenly winced in sharp pain. Had he really missed the shot? With incredible force, Choi was thrown back and thrown out of the building. He couldn't believe that this was even possible. Following him, Hyun quickly flew out, ready to deliver the decisive blow. Choi quickly gathered his courage, reminding himself that he was strong. He was an S rank. He clenched his hand into a strong fist. He was ready to show Hyun all the incredible power he had just received from the king. Hyun felt the powerful energy of the ancient king in him, so Choi had truly taken possession of his power. In that case, Hyun couldn't just let him go, he had to stop him. They met in a fierce battle, full of hatred and determination. Choi still couldn't fully control his newfound power, and Hyun mercilessly dealt him one blow after another. Choi desperately tried to block Hyun's fast and powerful punches, but his defense broke through time and again. With every blow of Hang Choi was thrown back, he flew helplessly to the side. Eventually, his powerful body was pressed into a solid stone wall. His leg got stuck in a crack, but he managed to pull it out, despite the fact that part of his leg was still stuck in the wall. But suddenly, Hyun appeared from behind, who with a scream used his deadly technique, piercing seed strike. There was a powerful explosion, and Choi was thrown far to the side. He fell helplessly to the ground. The power of mana that the ancient king had taught him to use had strangely synergized with Heng's own power, and his body was filled with incredible energy. In this state, Heng felt that he could defeat even Hoxin himself if he dared to come for his soul again. Even the powerful demon was reluctant to admit it. The demon said in surprise that the power he felt in Heng's body was comparable to the highest peak level of the strongest beings from the world he once lived in. Hyun looked at his teacher in surprise. The demon praised Heng much more than usual, and it was quite unusual for him. The demon suddenly shouted, "He cooks! He doesn't like it! He praises! He doesn't like it either! Does he like anything at all?" Hyun received another light slap from his capricious teacher. The demon turned around and growled, "Let's see if Hyun gets praise for once in his life." Hyun stood, feeling an incredible energy circulating through his body. But, as it turned out, mana could not be used and stored for as long as his usual Ki energy. Therefore, he quickly lost all his newfound strength. And at that very moment, a huge portal suddenly opened in the sky above them, from which Hyun saw a bright explosion of incredible power. Through the portal, they could see the head of their guild desperately fighting the terrible gulag. The servants quickly reported to Knight Nim that the ancient king had died in battle, and the dangerous hen had fled the abandoned entropy. She added with anxiety that if the terrible gulag lost the battle, this dangerous world would be completely destroyed. Although they made every effort to avoid such a catastrophic scenario, Knight Nim frowned, expressing his confidence that the gulag would never be defeated, even if both halves of the powerful sorcerer king were to unite. They wouldn't stand a chance against him, let alone the other weak warriors. In this case, he will need to personally take care of other small bugs that interfere with his plans. The portal that suddenly opened in front of the surprised Hyun began to inevitably pull him inside. But suddenly another portal opened next to him, the same one from which they began their dangerous journey. Does this strange pile of portals mean that someone is trying to gather in one specific place? The powerful demon immediately understood what this could mean, and even knew the name for this dangerous overlap between worlds. But suddenly, someone suddenly appeared behind Han, threatening him. It was the same cunning servant of Night, who said with a cold smile that his very existence was extremely upsetting to her master. The powerful demon felt an uncontrollable thirst for blood rise in his soul. The servant playfully folded her thin fingers into the shape of a cute heart, and at that moment, a multitude of sharp stone spikes grew from under Hang's feet with incredible speed, ready to pierce his body. But his body, in an incredibly short second, suddenly moved to a completely different safe place. The mighty demon thought proudly, "This is my apprentice!" He instantly used the absorbed mana to greatly increase his speed. A system message confirmed his thoughts, informing him that Hyun had successfully learned to use the magical energy he had absorbed. Without wasting a second, Hang swiftly attacked the treacherous servant, using his powerful technique, Seed Strike. A deafening explosion rang out, destroying everything around. But the cunning servant, thanks to his unusual umbrella, was miraculously able to dodge the deadly blow. Hyun was shocked. Blocking his powerful Seed Strike with an ordinary umbrella was a real mockery. The servant gracefully landed on the wall, looking reproachfully at Hang, and with feigned pity said that he was a terrible person. How could he do such a cruel thing to a weak, defenseless girl? Hyun instantly leapt into the air, using his fast demon flight. The girl watched his unique movement technique with undisguised admiration. Hyun was going to strike a devastating blow and finally find out why he had been attacked so suddenly. But the cunning girl clearly had no intention of giving him any answers, especially now that he was rapidly approaching her with such an angry face. Sharp stone spears once again grew from the ground with incredible speed, but Hang managed to escape from their deadly trap in time. He ran quickly, preparing to deliver a powerful blow with his tree technique. But the nimble girl easily jumped aside, mockingly shouting that he would never get her. However, suddenly a fast ball of pure energy swept past her, and immediately after her, a powerful explosion was heard, which occurred directly behind the girl. The blast wave threw her aside, but she was unexpectedly pulled out of the flames by Knight himself. The frightened girl quickly apologized to her master, admitting that she had apparently underestimated the strength of this defiant mortal. Knight slowly began to speak. According to his carefully crafted plan, Heng only had to wear down the ancient sorcerer king, weakening him before the decisive battle. There was no doubt about what Hyung had demonstrated. His strength was much greater than anticipated. Hen tried to find out who was standing in front of him, but Knight coldly replied that there was no point in that, because he would die at his hands very soon. Knight suddenly delivered a quick and powerful blow to Hen's face, but he miraculously managed to deliver a strong block. Knight thought respectfully. The powerful blow threw Heng several dangerous meters away, and at the same second, the cunning girl quickly conjured sharp stone spikes again, which instantly grew out of the ground. Heng fell helplessly right onto these sharp stones, and his blood spilled profusely onto the cold ground. Meanwhile, elsewhere, the terrifying gulag screamed furiously in the midst of its battle. Mighty Ha felt that he was taking this battle seriously, not intending to lose. She instantly turned off her Firebird mode, preparing for something else. She firmly said that it didn't matter which of them died in this brutal battle, but they had to know each other's names to understand at whose hand they died. She is Ha Yu Rak from the Red Lion, she said proudly. She swore in the names of my fallen comrades that she would destroy him with all her might. The terrible gulag suddenly changed its appearance, becoming even more vile. Most S-rank hunters possessed dangerous techniques that, in exchange for incredible power, took their own lives, using their life force as fuel for devastating attacks. Ha began to rapidly gather a huge amount of energy into one glowing ball. Her eyes flared with bright flames, and she screamed in fury, letting her deadly plasma burn everything around her. A man who was carefully observing the portal from outside reported with alarm that Anderson's density had already reached the critical mark of 84 units. No, it's already 85, and it's still growing rapidly. The size of the portal has increased alarmingly. Lee had a terrible feeling that this unstable portal was about to explode, and if even a powerful S-rank hunter couldn't stop it, then they definitely had no chance of survival. She received an urgent call from their department head, and she quickly informed him of the critical situation. She didn't believe they could withstand such a threat, but there was still no response from the perimeter. Most likely no reinforcements will reach them, and what should they do now? Are they all gonna die today? But suddenly, the boss announced that someone was already rushing to help them, and at that very moment, a thin purple line appeared in the dark sky, rapidly approaching. This mysterious line swiftly landed right on board their ship. It was Haxon himself. Balder, the same powerful S-rank hunter from Germany who had caused so much trouble recently. On the eve of the decisive battle in Germany, Jill had an important conversation with the powerful Haxon regarding the upcoming mission. Yamamoto was surprised to ask Haxon if he was really willing to accept Korea's request and go on a dangerous mission alone, considering his dislike of Hayurak. Haxon coldly replied that he would only help if his participation was absolutely necessary, and they could not find another suitable hunter. He added that hunters exist to save people's lives. It's strange that Haxon would mention this after causing so much destruction to Korea. And without waiting for an answer, he quickly took to the air, ready to go to help. The guys watched his heroic departure with admiration, although they understood that they could not simply leave everything as it was, and had to act. Meanwhile, Anderson's density has increased alarmingly to 89 units, and the Association fleet has reported that the portal could explode in as little as 30 minutes. Lee anxiously informed Haxon that 30 experienced A-rank hunters and the guild leader Ha Yu Rak were currently inside the unstable portal. Suddenly, another unknown portal opened behind them. Jill and Takeshi suddenly emerged from it, ready to join the fight. Haxon immediately asked about Heng, trying to find out his whereabouts. Lee replied that the boy was already inside the portal, bravely fighting an unknown threat. Haxon, knowing Hen's unusual abilities, felt a certain confidence that if this guy was there, everything would somehow work out. He sensed something much more in him than just ordinary supernatural abilities. Meanwhile, inside the burning portal, Ha continued her fierce fight against the terrifying gulag, demonstrating incredible strength. She used the powerful technique of creating a plasma sword of completion, hoping to deliver a decisive blow. Bright plasma beams flew rapidly into Gulag's body, mercilessly attacking him. But Ha didn't stop there, and immediately after a powerful blow with her sword, she began to burn the monster with her deadly fire. The powerful demon watched the battle with interest, amazed by the power of this firework woman who used extremely powerful techniques that he did not expect from her. Behind him stood Heng, who had managed to gather a significant amount of mana and chi within his body, transforming this energy into a powerful protective barrier. But even with this preparation, he still suffered serious injuries. Knight and his faithful servant attacked him. The powerful demon instantly told Hyun to use the powerful yin-yang demon technique for defense and attack. Hyun quickly began to absorb the surrounding energy, preparing for a counterattack. Although Knight missed his first strike, he changed the trajectory of his attack incredibly quickly. He had already raised his foot above the defenseless Hyun to deliver a devastating blow. The demon instantly prompted Haeon to use a surprise leaf strike to try to block the enemy's attack. There was a loud explosion as their forces collided. Hen flew back through the thick fog, and Knight watched in amazement at how he was able to predict his attack. But Hen, without wasting time, was already delivering his counterattack, the leaf strike. Knight, aware of the danger, had to quickly dodge this unexpected attack, and he succeeded. He immediately began preparing his next, even more powerful attack. In parallel with this, the brave Ha put all her strength into one devastating blow, realizing that time was running out. There was very little left, just a few more tense seconds. She had almost reached the maximum of her energy. She needed to stop releasing it. But she continued to gather strength, her eyes burning with determination. The terrible gulag also did not stop and continuously attacked Ha. Their powerful blows shook the world itself. They simultaneously counterattacked, and a deafening explosion rang out. Ha's body fell helplessly, and her once bright hair suddenly turned black as night. Is this the end of her heroic struggle? Memories of the past began to flash before her closed eyes. She remembered how she bravely fought a huge, terrifying monster. He hurled crushed cars at her, and she deftly dodged their deadly rain. But suddenly, her wise captain came to her aid, saving her from imminent death. He gently placed his hand on her head, admitting he was a little late, but praising her for her incredible courage. He spoke to her as if she were his own daughter, saying that she would soon become an S-rank hunter and would then definitely have his back in battle. But if anything happened to the captain, he asked her to take care of his clumsy son, Jay. Hey, he's still such a moron. Ha screamed desperately, begging him to shut up, assuring him that he would be okay, even though their job was dangerous. As she fell helplessly into the dark water, she realized that she had failed to keep her promise to the captain. The frightened servants shouted to Knight that the portal to the terrible gulag was suddenly beginning to close, cutting off their path to retreat. Knight, remaining calm, replied that he was aware of this and was trying to keep the situation under complete control. He tore apart the unstable portal with a sharp movement of his sword, demonstrating his power. Knight spoke condescendingly to Han, expressing his surprise that he had been able to hold out so long in battle with him. He coldly added that he didn't know if he would survive. Hyun today, but promised that if he survives, and they meet again. He took the frightened servant by the hand and began to climb towards the portal. Then he will appear before him in his true form, and then Hyun will definitely not survive. And after these threatening words, they both disappeared into the dark abyss of the portal. Hyun wanted to rush after them, but a sudden strong cough with blood stopped him. The powerful demon tried to calm him down, saying that there was no point in stressing so much because they were already gone. But Hyun couldn't just stay in this dangerous place. The wise demon told him to turn around and pay attention to the strange sword that the knight had carelessly left behind. Hyun cautiously approached the strange sword that radiated an incomprehensible power. The powerful demon, sensing danger, strongly advised him to act quickly, as this dangerous world would most likely close soon. The demon explained that Han needed to swing his sword just like the treacherous knight, Nim did, cutting through the portal. But Heng didn't know how to do it, and the demon patiently told him to pour his inner energy into the ancient sword. Hyun, trying to save himself, began to slowly pour his internal energy into the cold steel of the sword, and it suddenly burst into bright flames. Gathering his courage, Heng decisively swung his flaming sword, imitating Knight's movement. But the internal energy didn't seem to work on the portal, so he needed to try using magical mana. However, suddenly the water around him began to rise rapidly, inevitably covering the defenseless Heng. Water gushed through the ruined walls of the ancient castle, flooding everything around. Heng slipped and fell, but at the last moment he desperately grabbed the stone walls of the castle, trying to stay afloat. The powerful demon watched his disciple carefully. Hyun was so exhausted now that even plain water could knock him off his feet. But he had to hurry. Time was running out. Gathering his last strength, Heng tried to swing the flaming sword once more. And this time a miracle happened. The portal finally opened, giving him a chance for salvation. Without a second's hesitation, Hyun jumped into the dark abyss of the portal and instantly landed right where he had begun his dangerous journey into this strange world. Hyun looked anxiously at the portal he had just jumped out of. That abandoned world was merging horribly with the world in which Ha was desperately fighting and was mercilessly flooding it. Heng realized with horror that the guild leader was still in that dangerous portal. They must go back immediately and help her. Meanwhile, the treacherous knight returned to his luxurious palace, barely able to stand on his feet. He fell helplessly to one knee, feeling excruciating pain from the horrific injuries he had received in battle. Dark blood oozed steadily from his deep wound. The frightened servants were surprised to think that he had not changed his human form, even after receiving so many serious injuries. Was his promise to the ancient king really that important? The king was a being beyond awe and fear, and no one could ever disobey his orders without consequences. Knight lay helplessly on the bed, and his entire entourage instantly bustled around him, trying to provide first aid and begin treatment. Knight, feeling weak, thought that it was a pity that the powerful sorcerer king was dead. But if this overlapping portal collapsed, another spectacle would await them. Knight still hoped that he would be able to face this dangerous hen again in battle. But he was tormented by the question of why the information about his true abilities varied so much. He was brought out of his anxious thoughts by the old butler, who carefully brought a healing potion to restore his strength. He cautiously asked Knight if the king had contacted him, but the latter replied in the negative, mentioning only the Lady Nim. But why would he be needed? The butler sadly announced that he was sorry to say that. But if their carefully crafted plan goes awry, the punishment will be inevitable death. Knight broke the crystal glass in anger, muttering an oath. Bastard! How dare he talk about such things? Knight instantly called his faithful servant and ordered her that now was the best time, while everyone was fussing over the fragments of the destroyed portal. The servant chuckled, asking if he really wanted to start looking for this. Now, the explosion of the unstable portal lost all meaning, because he had to be the first to find it, and then the rook himself would certainly bow before his power. He authoritatively ordered his pawns to immediately begin a thorough search. They must find this mysterious singularity. Meanwhile, in the dangerous portal, the water continued to rapidly flood the ancient city located inside the tall castle. A woman, unknown to us so far, stood calmly nearby and watched the terrible battle with strange pleasure. She said thoughtfully that Hyun Su had proven to be quite a formidable opponent, and Knight is a real fool for not noticing the singularity right under his nose. She laughed softly, thinking ominously about how Knight had smugly believed his cunning plan had worked flawlessly. But she couldn't wait to see his inevitable fall, watching his helplessness. She almost jumped for joy because it all seemed extremely amusing to her. But suddenly someone approached her and politely called her Elephant Nim. "We found him," the man said calmly, standing nearby. The man snapped his fingers, and Choi's unconscious body suddenly appeared in the air, hanging helplessly for a moment. Then the body fell with all its force onto the cold ground. The woman screamed happily, pleased with what she saw. The man stated that he was already dead. His soul had left his body. Slon Nim felt slightly sad, remembering that even the bracelet she had given him hadn't helped him defeat Heng. The man asked her what they should do next with Choi's body. Slon Nim thoughtfully replied that since Choi had absorbed part of the sacred vessel of life, he might still prove useful to their plans. They should take him with them, and without further ado, the man opened a new portal, glowing with a strange light. The woman quickly walked in his direction, thoughtfully thinking about her own business. She believed in Henna and sincerely hoped that he would be able to find this mysterious oasis that they were all so desperately searching for.